Mike Gann. I am the current chair, and welcome everyone to this hybrid meeting. First order of business is I'd like to call upon the town councilwoman, Evelyn Bryant Ward, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to recognize that since the last Planning Commission meeting, Commissioner John Mudd was reappointed by the town council. So John, welcome back to the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Town clerk, do we have any missing commissioners tonight, or are we all here? Dawn and Tracy and Greg, are they all online?
We have several phone numbers that we're not quite sure who they are.
Okay.
And we've asked them.
But we do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. You have Mr. Mudd, yourself, Ms. Johnson, and Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Okay, thank you. Next order of business is approval of minutes from the meeting of July 5th. Assuming all the commissioners have had a chance to review, I open it up for a motion on acceptance or changes. Any commissioner want to speak up at this point, please?
Chairman Gann, I move that we accept the July 5th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
That was John Mudd.
correct.
Okay, any discussion? Not hearing any. I go to a vote. Tracy, Commissioner Johnson, yes or no? John Mudd, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Dawn Banks, are you on? Greg Sampson, are you on?
Commissioner again, this is Tracy Johnson. The mic was, I couldn't unmute it. So I just want to be clear. I didn't respond, so I apologize.
I wasn't clear. Was that a yes or a no on the?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd, when I look at the invitee list, anybody listed as attendees have their microphone muted, and I don't believe they can turn it on. So I don't know if that's a technical glitch, but I don't see anybody else able to speak with a muted mic and camera.
The town clerk, are you able to unmute the commissioners when we come to times where they need to speak?
If they can send Kelly a message over comments that they are who they are, we'll let them in. And then when we go to the comments section of the open hearing, we'll open it all.
Okay. Okay, so we have 4 votes in favor. That causes for the minutes to be approved. Move on to the next item, public hearing. So I want to thank all of you for attending this meeting, those of you in person and any of those of you from the public who are virtually joining us. Thank you very much. Before officially calling this public hearing to order, I would like to ask the town clerk to review the procedures of this hearing to make sure everyone hears what they are. Mr. Town Clerk, would you please review the procedures?
Town of La Plata public hearings will be conducted in the following manner. At the discretion of the chairman, speakers' comments may be limited to 3 minutes. If you are joining the public hearing virtually and wish to speak, for the record, you must announce your name when joining the meeting and state that you intend to speak during the hearing in the comments section. Keep your phone audio muted until called to speak. If you are attending in person, a sign-in sheet is provided at the entry of the council chambers, and you should indicate that you wish to speak. The town clerk will add your name to the speakers list. Registration to speak will end when the public hearing is opened. Written documents for the record should have been emailed to the town clerk, who will then presented them to the chairman prior to the opening of the hearing. At the conclusion of this public hearing, if the record is held open and you have questions you would like to submit written documents for the record, please contact the town clerk prior to the close of the record by phone 301-960-3507, by fax 301-934-3965, by post Town of La Plata, attention Town Clerk, 305 Queen Anne Street, La Plata, Maryland, 20646, or email legislative@townoflaplata.org.
Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. So at this point, having heard the procedures, I would like to call the public hearing to order and make sure that we've had proper review of the public notices. Mr. Town Clerk, has the notice of public hearing been properly advertised?
Yes. For the record, the public hearing was advertised in the Southern Maryland newspaper in the July 15th, 2022 edition. The affidavit of the town clerk and related certificate of publication that the hearing was properly advertised in the Maryland Independent newspaper. Certified letters were sent to the adjacent and contiguous properties, and that I received the affidavit of signs being posted on all surrounding roadways. The affidavits are attached to the agenda.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to call upon Director Harrington to provide the staff report.
Right, good evening, Planning Commission members. So for the Steeplechase Master Site Development Plan, the purpose of the public hearing this evening is for the Planning Commission to make a recommendation with the consideration of public input to the Town Council regarding the amended Master Site Development Plan for the villages of Steeplechase. The Town Council is the approving authority and will hold a public hearing later. So the Master Site Development Plan is a detailed document that sets guidelines for long-term development over a site over a specific period of time. The Master Site Development Plan that we are reviewing tonight does not constitute approval of the preliminary subdivision plat, nor does it guarantee the availability of school seat allocations, water sewer availability, or the actual layout of the preliminary subdivision plat. So for a little background, the property was annexed into the town in 1978. It was zoned mixed-use development, or MUD, in 2004. In 2005, phases 1 and 2, or as shown on the previous Master Site Development Plan, parcels 1 and 2, received a traditional mixed-use zone designation. In 2016, Somerset Buckeye Circle LLC, which is also the current owner, purchased 9.48 acres from the town of La Plata, which is now included in Phase 3 and part of why they need to amend their Master Site Development Plan. In 2016, a revised T&D preliminary plat was approved by the Planning Commission and clarified that there were 4 approved dwelling types and that no single dwelling type could constitute more than 50% of the overall unit total. So that is what you see on the revised and the previously approved Master Site Development Plan. The 4 unit types are single family detached, duplex, 2-story townhome, and 3-story townhome. I just wanted to make that verification because the unit types as their names, Augusta, Savannah, those are not what we are looking at. We're looking at the actual types of dwellings. In 2018, the property was rezoned to PDST, or Planned Development Steeplechase, since they were past more than 50% of the development was completed. And all future development must be consistent with the prior approvals. And I will refer to the attached consistency analysis for the Master Site Development Plan and the Design and Development Guidelines of 2005. So to give a brief comparison over the previous Master Site Development Plan and the proposed, the total net acreage for the 2005 Master Site Development Plan, which was only Phase 1 and Phase 2, or parcels 1 and 2, was 74.8051 acres. The maximum density was 486 units, and that was using the 6.5 dwelling units per acre required by the TND zone.
And can I interrupt just a second to make sure that everyone online can hear? Is there any way that we can check that?
Chairman Gann, this is Kelly Phipps. The audio appears to have failed. I'm trying to fix that.
Someone just said, I can hear.
So do we need? to wait?
Audio is functional. I can hear as well. I can hear. All
Okay,
right, I think we're back on track. So again, just to do a comparison of the previously approved master site development plan, which included parcel 1 and 2 or phase 1 and 2 only. Total net acreage was 74.8051 acres. The maximum density as allowed by the T&D zone is 6.5 dwelling units per acre. So for parcels 1 and 2, that came out to 486 units. They were proposing 372 under parcels 1 and 2. Phase 1 had 189 units, Phase 2 had 183, and Phase 3 was shown on the plans as pending T&D approval. For the 2022 proposed master site development plan amendment for phases 1, 2, and 3, the total net acreage is 96.13 acres. That allows a maximum density of 624 units when multiplied by the 6.5 dwelling units per acre. They are proposing 585 units, so they are not meeting the maximum or going over the maximum density. For phase 1, we had approved revisions previously.
Director Harrington, one moment. Can we show her presentation? They're asking to see the comparisons that you're presenting. They're not seeing that.
Kelly, could you open the presentation window across the entirety of your screen?
Director Harrington's presentation. That's not it.
Do I need to email it to Kelly? Do I need to email it to Kelly? Are we good now? Okay. And you can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is where I'm at. We're looking at the 2005 master site development plan compared to the 2022 proposed master site development plan. So So again, they're proposing 585 units in the, with phases 1, 2, and 3. They are allowed a maximum density of 624 units. So phase 1 had 193 units that were approved via previous preliminary plats. Phase 2 has 199 units, again, via previously approved preliminary plats. And phase 3 is proposing 193 dwelling units. The unit tabulations are broken down on the bottom. So you can see that they are proposing 36 single-family dwellings, 66 duplexes, 33 two-story townhomes, and 58 three-story townhomes for the total of 193. And as noted on the ratios to the right, no one single dwelling type will exceed 50% of the total units. Next. So here is just a visual comparison between the 2005 Master Site Development Plan and the 2022. So you can see that they did add the 9.48 acres into the overall phase 3.
You show them where that actually is, or
Phase 3 is?
it. This is 9 point.
The green.
This was purchased to make this all one contiguous piece of ground. Sorry.
No, you're fine. There's just a delay with the online. And I don't want to get ahead of anyone that's virtual. There we go. So this is the most recent preliminary plat that was approved for phases 1 and 2. I just wanted to show the overall, which was approved on June 5th of 2018. So again, it just highlights that the 50% rule for the dwelling units and lays out the prior 2 phases. It's a work in progress, hybrid meetings, it's all new. We're getting there. Okay, so for the villages of Steeplechase, I wanted to highlight a few notes on transportation. So for US 301, which is where their main entrance is off of Catalpa Drive, that is obviously owned and maintained by the Maryland Department of Transportation or State Highway Administration, and they have full access or full maintenance over that intersection. So they are the ones that would decide what could be done with that intersection. We do have interparcel connections proposed to the south through the Stagecoach development. That preliminary plat was approved on June 7th of 2022, and there is an option to connect to the north through the South Town Center property. So I've highlighted those 2 properties over on the right-hand side. The town has not adopted an adequate public facilities ordinance and therefore does not require traffic impact studies at this point in time. If a traffic impact study is submitted, the town would send it to the State Highway Administration or MDOT for review. The state would review the assumptions regarding trip generations, distributions, assignments, along with any internal capture bypass trips claimed and determine if any mitigation was required along Route 301. The town does not have any control over any improvements along Route 301 or Crane Highway. After talking with the State Highway Administration, they do have certain warrants for traffic signals. And as was the case for Heritage Green, they generally have about 1,000 units before they would trigger a traffic signal. So with Steeplechase and Stagecoach development, we would most likely be looking at a traffic signal down off of Old Stagecoach Road. And then next, I wanted to talk about the environmental features on the site. And I know that the applicant will provide some additional details as well. But here's an overall view of the site. I've highlighted in green the forest conservation areas, and then in blue the streams that go through the property. So overall, the development is providing 63.97 acres, which is 54% of the overall development as open space. They are preserving 25.50 acres of forest. That's 21.689%. Per the town's resource protection standards and forest conservation code, the amount of forest conservation required to be preserved is 15%. All the streams and wetlands on the site are being protected with forest conservation easements, or they will be protected with the buffer yards as required. So the next steps for the Steeplechase Master Site Development Plan is for the Planning Commission, as they can hold the record open for 30 days or close the public hearing. The Planning Commission shall then provide a recommendation to the Town Council. At a Town Council, the Town Council shall hold a public hearing and advertise in accordance with the Town Code and state law. And with their public hearing, they will provide the final approval with conditions, or denial of the amended Master Site Development Plan. If, and I say if, the Master Site Development Plan is approved or approved with conditions, the applicant would then proceed with the preliminary subdivision plat review. That is where we would get into the details of the site, the lot layout, the school seat allocation, the forest conservation specifications, stormwater management, et cetera. And outside agencies will also need to review and approve the proposed development plans, including SMECO, Maryland Department of the Environment, Soil Conservation District, and the Maryland Department of Transportation as applicable. So the staff recommendation is, at this hearing, the applicant shall present the application and offer supporting testimony and documentation as the applicant deems necessary or desirable. The members of the public shall have the opportunity to comment on the proposed plan. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission shall consider the application and make findings and recommendations. The Planning Commission must make one recommendation based on the following three choices. You can recommend approval of the Master Site Development Plan as presented, recommend approval of the Master Site Development Plan with conditions, or recommend denial of the Master Site Development Plan. The Planning Commission shall then transmit both findings and recommendations to the Town Council for action. And that concludes my presentation, and we can move on to the applicant presentation.
Thank you, Director Harrington. Excuse me. At this point, I'd like to move to the applicant presentation.
Yes, good evening, Chairman. Planning Commission members, my name is Steve Scott. I'm the attorney for the applicant in this transaction, this application. With me is Ron Reimer from the development group. Also, Kathy Flerlagi and Mike Prisbaki from Soltez Engineering. That was a really, really good introduction, and we don't want to get repetitive this evening. We do have quite a bit of information to convey to you. As was indicated, this is phase 3 of the Steeplechase subdivision. This is, of course, the last phase of what I personally would consider a very, very nice project, a very successful project. I've been working as counsel for the developer since the beginning of this project, and I'm personally really proud of it. I think it's probably the best one in the county. The housing layout, the units, the feel of the project is, I think, really unique for Southern Maryland. Enough of that. Enough of that. You're welcome. We're going to address, in connection with this Master Site Development Plan amendment, zoning compliance, zoning ordinance compliance, comprehensive plan compliance, and also compliance with the plan development governing documents. Plan development governing documents are an important concept in our zoning ordinance. Per the zoning ordinance, plan development governing documents, those are the collection of documents that establish the density, use, plan development zone, development standards, and special provisions that guide the build out of the project. So that's the definition of plan development governing documents. And we'd like to identify those plan development governing documents as they relate to this project and provide testimony that this particular application does comply with those plan development governing documents. So I think I'd like to start with Ms. Flerlagi. Ms. Flerlagi is in the unique position of having been the planning director for the town when most of these approvals were given to this project. So I'm just going to lead her through, and I don't want this to sound too much like court testimony, but kind of lead her through some discussion about the zoning. So Ms. Flerlagi, could you state your education and experience and your qualifications as a planner and a zoning expert? I think
Good
your,
evening, ladies and gentlemen.
I
My
think your
name's-
mic
my-
is off.
on?
Yeah.
Now I'm here. Good evening. Currently I'm employed at Soltes Incorporated. We're an engineering firm up in Waldorf. My full name Kathy Flerlagi, and I function as the senior planner for the Waldorf office. And I do most of their environmental planning and entitlement work specific to zoning map amendments, plan development, text amendments, and that sort of thing. And as Mr. Scott stated, between 2004 and 2011, I did serve the town of La Plata as their planning director, their first planning director.
And Ms. Flurlagi, you also have some planning and design related qualifications and
Yes.
licenses and certifications.
Yes, like Ms. Harrington, I'm a certified planner, AICP, that's the American Institute of Certified Planners. It's a professional registration, comes with a code of ethics, that sort of thing you're all familiar with. Also, I'm a qualified professional under the COMAR regulations. I'm able to prepare forest stand delineations and forest conservation plans. And in connection with the state requirements and forest conservation ordinance of the town of La Plata. In fact, I recently prepared the latest forest stand delineation and preliminary forest plan for phase 3, so that we could identify resources on the site very early on before doing any sort of layout work, so we could see what was out there and what resources were needing to be preserved. Those 2 plans have since been approved by the town.
And just to state it again, you were planning director for the town when the MUD zoning category and the TND overlay were added to the zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And then also when that zoning category and that overlay were added to Steeplechase subdivision, correct?
correct.
So with all of that experience and background, obviously you have a great familiarity with the plan development process in the town and also the zoning ordinance, both the current zoning ordinance and the prior zoning ordinance, correct?
True.
And I mentioned the prior zoning ordinance because that's important in this particular case. These are relatively unique zones because of the transition that happened in 2018. Could you just briefly explain the zoning category and how that works?
Yes, and it is probably the first of its type you needed to examine in this way. The property was zoned MUD 2, which is mixed-use development that could include residential and commercial uses. In this case, the mixed-use development included Steeplechase, a residential development, and then there was the commercial component. When the TND ordinance was devised for a residential development, the commercial component, the building that's out front, as soon as you pull into the left there on Catalpa, that's not part of the TND. A master plan was approved in 2005 that showed, you've seen it on the screen earlier this evening, the first 2 phases of Steeplechase with a TND pending or proposed zoning designation. TND was a new section of the code that specifically dealt with a type of design that would provide for sort of a design scheme, and it relates to a grid network of streets, a strong streetscape, public gathering spaces, superior architecture. As we moved through the process, there came a point very similar to today where we needed to approve the master plan. And there are 4 tests involved with that approval, and they were base zoning of the land, character of the tract, superior design, and superior architecture and features. All 4 of those tests, based on the governing documents that were presented at that time, the design guidelines and the master plan, related that project as being compliant with those TND, with those tests. And it was consistent with the TND ordinance and with TND designation. At that point, the planning commission, in a hearing situation, much like today, recommended to the town council that that master plan with the TND designation on it be approved. Today, the only thing really needing to be amended from that original master plan is the addition of the additional acreage. That's what brought us back here. Had that not been done, there really wouldn't have needed to be an amended master plan because TND pending had already been shown on the original. Therefore, the consistency was already established as it would move forward.
So in 2018, the zoning ordinance dropped the TND and the MUD. But as Director Harrington explained, the status of the project allowed it to keep a designation to its old zoning. So we still look at the TND and the MUD zone when we analyze the
Exactly.
master site development plan, correct?
Exactly. The new code provided for the three existing planned development communities, Agricopia, Hickory Ridge, and Steeplechase, that already had development existing or were to a large degree even built out, in the case of Hickory Ridge, to keep their development, any future development, as the old code read.
Okay, and you, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, that, I tend to go on.
I hadn't noticed. You heard me mention the concept of plan development governing documents. And of course, under the zoning ordinance, those are the documents that govern the planning of a plan development, which is, that statement's kind of circular, but it's true. Can you identify the plan development governing documents for this particular project?
That would be the master plan and the design and development guidelines.
And those are public records. They're in the record, official records of the town, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with respect to this particular application, is it your testimony that this application, this amendment to the master site development plan is consistent with those plan development governing documents
Yes.
and is consistent with the zoning ordinance,
Yes.
consistent with the comprehensive land use plan? You saw the comprehensive land use plan analysis in the staff report. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and we have provided some information related to both the 2009 comprehensive plan and the 2020 comprehensive plan in our analysis because they were both important. In 2009, the piece of property that was shown on that 2005 master plan was zoned light industrial. And as we came through working with Steeplechase and seeing how it could come to be and was coming to be, it was pretty obvious that we didn't want an industrial zone right adjacent. So in 2009, in a town-driven rezoning, we came from the town, it wasn't applicant-driven, in other words, that property was rezoned MUD 2 so that it could join the TND, because you had to have MUD zoning to become a TND, base zoning of the land, the first test. So that was put in place. And then you'll see that in the 2020 comprehensive plan, that piece was identified and zoned PDST in the expectation of this day. So everything the town has done from 2005 to this point, and everything the developer has done from 2005 to this point is consistent with that plan as it was destined to be. Everything that facilitated adding that piece and it becoming part of phase 3 was facilitated by the town all the way through.
Okay.
Because that, anyway.
And bringing that zoning discussion kind of full circle. Of course, you're aware that there are a number of concerns by the residents of Steeplechase, and of course, rightfully so in terms of their protecting their interests, their investment in their neighborhood, and of course their way of living in that subdivision, which is again a beautiful subdivision. But in terms of the purpose of tonight, we're looking at an overall, essentially concept or bubble plan when we talk about the amendment of the master site development plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so such things as traffic studies, stormwater management, water sewer issues, utility issues. Those are issues for a
Preliminary.
different proceeding, which, go ahead, you're on the right
and
track.
as Ms. Harrington has mentioned, that those sorts of finer details are established during the TND development plan stage of review. That is what I always refer to as a preliminary plan on steroids. There's so many more things that have to show up with a TND development plan. It is an arduous review process, and there are a lot of boxes to be checked on architecture, on park planning, on lots of things, all the amenities that will come. That's another bites at the apple, so to speak. In this particular function tonight, it's really to show that the character has remained the same. And by character, we mean the type of dwelling units that will be built within the 4 types and within the no one more than 50% rule. That's been established. We've shown that it is a grid network of streets and that the street cross sections are the same as what was done before. We are showing looped roads, the sort of horseshoe conformation that's been seen everywhere throughout Steeplechase since the beginning. It's kind of hallmark of the design, the interior courtyards, the plenty of open space, 55% of the site, as Ms. Harrington mentioned. So in every way, shape of those 4 basic tests, the designation round and the amendment to the master plan, everything absolutely on the money.
Okay. And planning commission members, of course, again, we have a lot of information. So if you have any questions along the way, just let us know. That's really kind of the summary of zoning and comprehensive land use plan and the purpose for this hearing tonight with respect to the master site development plan. Now, I did mention the concerns of the residents of Steeplechase, and we do not take those lightly. We want to make sure that we address them, and Mr. Reimer will address those at this point to the best that we can.
Put that presentation home. Oh, it is? Okay, thank you very much. How do I make it go forward? Oh, I see. Okay. My IT capabilities are not the best, so please be patient. I typically would lib a conversation, but having so many people here this evening, actually, I'm going to read right from my script, so I'll be a little different than normal. Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Ron Reimer, and I am the developer and had been the sole builder in the villages of Steeplechase. Wow, I would never imagine I could generate such a crowd personally and virtually for a planning commission meeting for an approval of an amended master site development plan that has been acknowledged by the town planning commission since 2005 and within the town comprehensive plan of 2009 and 2020. I'm here before you this evening for one purpose, and that is for the planning commission to give its recommendation to the town council that I have met all the requirements of an amended master site development plan. And why is it an amended site development plan? It's because I added that 9.49 acres of property to the overall 115 acres in 2017. Why did I do it? That's because another developer had it. He owned it and it was adjacent. He had rezoned it from light industrial to residential. And he was then now planning to construct at least 48 townhomes that would have no likeness, no planning, no architectural controls that we have in the villages of Steeplechase. I was advised by my banker, my accountant, and by my investor that this was not a prudent financial decision, as at the time I was averaging 17 lot sales per year for the previous 10 years and still had 300 lots to develop. Frankly, the last thing that I needed at the time was to incur more personal debt to acquire more property when I was already barely surviving financially. I did not take their advice, as it was too important to me to make sure that the continuity of the overall property was maintained. So I purchased it on February 27, 2017. Tonight, you are seeing the amended master site plan that is part of the overall T&D approval process. Per the town's consistency analysis, the amended site development plan and phase 3 preliminary subdivision plan is consistent with the requirements for the site development within the planned development zones in the town of La Plata. Approval of an amended site development plan to allow development of Steeplechase Phase 3 would advance the goals and objectives of the 2020 Town of La Plata Comprehensive Plan and promote the conformity and establish a previous approved established for developments within the Steeplechase community. In all candidness, this should be the end of this conversation, and the Planning Commission should open the discussion up to the public as and take the recommendation of the Planning Department consistency analysis and approve the amended master site plan back to the town council so it can go through its normal development process. Unfortunately, I think tonight's comments has the possibilities of an attack on me personally of how I, as the developer, has operated the HOA. Questions, issues, and concerns about the amended master site development plan that are not typically answered in this stage of the approval process, and probably an overall referendum on the growth of the town of La Plata in general. I asked the Planning Commission to hear those concerns, as I will, but respectfully concentrate on the fact that tonight's sole request is for an approval of an amended master site development plan to the town council that has been on the books for over 17 years, recommended by the staff, and fulfills the 2020 comprehensive plan. To be clear to everyone, this is not a new annexation, rezoning of land, change in land planning concept. It is exactly the continuation of the villages of Steeplechase from phase 1 and phase 2, which has been in the comprehensive plan from 2009 and updated in 2020 when the adjacent property was purchased. While the majority of the concerns and issues in the community put together and what happened to visionary planning are typically not discussed at the master site development plan approval, but instead addressed in the next step of the development process, I would be negligent not to recognize the time and effort of the presentation. First and foremost, I think it says everything about the village's Steeplechase community that two of our five current Town of La Plata planning commissioners, the first alternate, and a prior planning commissioner chose to live in the community. We also have a current Charles County senior planner and a retired Charles County Director of Planning and Growth Management who has chosen to live here. So we must have done something right to date. While I was not expecting the amount of public outcry for this approval, as this has been planned for 17 years, we are using primarily the same land plan concepts, architectural designs to phase 1 and phase 2, and I have tried to reach out to the community since I heard there were concerns. When the public notification first came out, I received a call on Friday night, July 15th, from a single-family homeowner located in this area. And that is over there. Can I show my cursor? I'm not going to do this very well. I'm going to have to get up. This is okay. I had a gentleman call me in this area right here. From a single family homeowner located in this area that even told the townhomes were being built across the street. I met with him on the following Monday to discuss his concerns. I believe when we walked away that morning that he appreciated the effort we had done in this area from a planning standpoint. As you can tell, these single families here, I purposely put single families right across the street from them. The following
Excuse me, Mr. Reimer. could you also point out again, because this is a different chart, where the additional acreage is relative to that?
This property ended right here when I owned it. This is the new property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
The following Wednesday, July 20th, I received a request from the members of our monthly HOA committee to have permission to use the residence of the community so they prepare for the planning commission meeting. I thought it would be helpful for me to be available to answer any questions, but this request was denied. I then asked the HOA monthly committee members that I be provided an opportunity to address any issues or concerns after the meeting, and I was never given a response that they wanted this to occur.
Mr. Reiner, can you speak just a little bit louder because they're not able to hear you online?
You
want to take this one?
Can I take that with me?
You can.
Would you like me to repeat that last paragraph? The following Wednesday, July 20th, I received a request from members of our monthly HOA committee to have permission to use the residence club for the community so they could prepare for the planning commission meeting. I thought it would be helpful for me to be available to answer any questions, but this request was denied. I then asked the HOA monthly committee members that I be provided an opportunity to address any issues or concerns after the meeting, and I was never given a response they wanted this to occur. As mentioned before, numerous items in the community presentation, traffic, stormwater management, and environmental concerns are addressed further down the approval process and are not a requirement for the Planning Commission to give its recommendation of the amended Master Site Development Plan to the Council. Overall, I think it was a very well done presentation, and I'm in agreement with many of their concerns, especially landscaping and architectural concerns. In 2021, for health reasons, quality of life reasons, and the fact that my right-hand man for operations standpoint wanted to retire at the end of 2022, I sold the remaining lots in Phase 2, Section 2 to another builder with the understanding that they would use my architectural to finish Phase 2. I sold them basically this half of Phase 2. I developed all of it, built this, and sold the last 80 odd lots to Timberlake Homes. To another builder with the understanding they would use my architectural to finish Phase 2. Long before the community began noting inconsistencies, we had been in contact with the builder regarding construction, address plaques, garage doors, shingle colors, as well as other various issues. We were trying to make consistency as much as you were. Overall, they have made proper adjustments, but the builder, for me personally, has not done a decent job in regards to landscaping. And I will address that when I speak about the community presentation. So, did not think I was going to hold this, make a presentation, and try to show things. So I'm okay. And as multiple people know in this room, I am not a multitasker. So thank you. If I had seen this, I would have been happy to speak about these issues with you. This was your call to action. The Planning Commission leave the record open so substantial public comment can be provided by the community. Personally, I don't think the public record needs to stay open in regards to this. We have met and fulfilled every consistency item for an amended master site development plan. A traffic study, I'm going to start abbreviating. We've talked about the traffic study. A traffic study will be required when we get to the preliminary approval process. Stormwater management. Stormwater management will be dealt with when we go to the preliminary approval process. That being said, there's 3 steps in a stormwater management. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. We have already completed step 1. We're moving on to step 2. So we already believe we're in compliance as we're gradually going through this process. An environmental assessment in regards to beavers, wild turkeys. We actually have already contacted the natural resources. We already have letters from natural resources that we are not disturbing any type of species that we should be concerned about at this point. The developer reevaluate the phase 3 means to our community by considering the proposed plan. Number one, adding another entrance to 301. This is our property right here. This is how much 301 entrance I have. I can't add another entrance to 301. We've discussed this. We've already built this and moved it over to Stagecoach Road as requested by the town. And we've actually stubbed this out to the next phase if we needed another.
We actually had a question online, and while you had that topic open, I was going to answer the question. So the question was, can you update us on the status of Stagecoach and what, where that is in the process?
I can do that, or you. It just went through Planning Commission last month. It was preliminary approved, and they're moving forward on their development. So as our development grows, I would anticipate Stagecoach to be growing in the same time, and that should work out very well for that overall second access. Would that be correct?
Question, Director Harrington. You agree with Mr. Reimer in that regard?
I do. So like I said, we do have the preliminary plat approved for Stagecoach at this point for the 636 units. They will then come forward with their individual final plats for their phasing. So I think they had 6 or 7 phases proposed. The first phase that I believe that they're proposing is the one that connects into Steeplechase. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I was under the impression of. And that will connect down to Old Stagecoach Road. Actually, can you pull up the future roads map? Oh, I created a future roads map to kind of show the two subdivisions together so you could see how they interconnect. And then we can come back to your PowerPoint.
Do we wait for that chart or let Mr. Reimer continue?
And I think your microphone turned off.
So, and also while we're waiting, Janine and I kind of looked at each other when Mr. Reimer mentioned a traffic impact study being required. It's not currently required by the town code, but we do understand that the town is working on a new adequate public facilities ordinance. And more than likely, and I would imagine there's 100% chance that by the time this project gets to detailed planning, there will be a requirement to comply with traffic APF, which of course will require a traffic impact analysis. So that's just to correct that.
Thank you.
So should Mr. Reimer continue, or do you have something you want to show us?
Is it?
Director Harrington.
I was going to show a future road connection map. It was a JPEG. I sent it to your email. Yes, we're working on pulling it up for anyone that's online. It's not up yet. And if anyone, while we're waiting, and if anyone is interested in going and looking at the Stagecoach actual preliminary plat, if you go to the June 7th Planning Commission meeting on the town civic web, you can see that full site plan and see all the details on that as well. And so this is a broad overview of the.
So this right here is Steeplechase. And I'm sorry, since I'm pointing up here, here's Catalpa Drive. This is where I have already stubbed out to Stagecoach. And what I believe Janine's going to say, they've created 2 entrances off of Old Stagecoach here and there.
That is correct. So they have proposed entrances down here off of Old Stagecoach Road. And these roads will connect through to Steeplechase. I think what are you calling it? Ironwood.
Ironside, Ironwood.
Ironwood Drive.
Ironside.
Yeah.
What's the
So
Raymond
that'll
Burke?
connect through, and then there'll be two means of ingress and egress onto Old Stagecoach Road. And dependent on the traffic study and the warrants, obviously this will be a state highway decision, but most likely if there is going to be a traffic signal, it will be down here at the Old Stagecoach Road intersection.
Mr. Reimer, just to be clear, is that Ironside or Ironwood?
Ironwood.
Ironwood, thank you.
I don't want to get my Raymond Burke confusion. The next bullet they have is conducting an assessment of the amenities such as the pool, fitness room, play equipment. I've been in the development business now for 15 to 20 years. There is no rule of thumb of what size fitness room you build, what size residence club you build, what size pool you build. There's no one that can give you an analysis of that. I've spoken to numerous land planners in regards to this. As a general rule of thumb for a community that's somewhere in the 600 home range, they look to make a residence club between 3,500 square feet to 7,500 square feet. Our residence club is 7,378 square feet. So what we had always planned for the growth, that's what, when we built the residence club back early in the development, we had anticipated this, and we built it the size that would accommodate the size of the community. The pool, I've been to 100 communities throughout the United States. I've seen pools the size of a bathing tub to super Olympic pools. There's just no rule of thumb. And I use this analogy all the time. Some people like it, some people don't, is that when you ask me about a size of the pool, my analogy is the size of a church. You don't build a church for Christmas and Easter. You don't build a pool for Memorial Day, Labor Day, and 4th of July. It's like tennis courts. You're not going to build 40 tennis courts at the property. Removing the two exits on Contalpa Drive. Can you give me my next slide, please? So I took what they did, and these are the 7 intersections and on phase 3. And there is a concern that I've created too many intersections. I have to chuckle. They want me to create other intersections out to 301, but they don't want me to create internal intersections, which is the whole part of a T&D. So if you take these 7, and I would argue that this one right here should really be in phase 1, there are actually 6 intersections in phase 3. In phase 1, if you look, there's 11 intersections. And in phase 2, there's actually 13 intersections. The land plan is exactly what a T&D concept is. It's interconnecting driveways to do this. So I believe we fulfilled exactly what we had intended to do. Incorporating more courtyards, pocket parks, and amenities for children to include tot lots. Can you go to my next slide? So, go back one. So I read that and I was like, did we really do a poor job? Kathy and you, did you all do a poor job from land planning? And I said, I really don't think we did. So I took this right here. This is phase 2. And then I compared it to all of phase 3. So if you look at phase 2, go to the next slide, please. Phase 2, the pocket parks, and this is for discussion purposes only. I can't tell you I got down to the correct inch, but it's interesting. Phase 2 has 56,210 square feet of open space park area. Go to the next slide. Phase 3 with this huge open area here, the pocket park here, the way we designed this around the single families and the villas actually has 109,852 square feet of open space. Again, from a land plan concept, I think we've done a good job. I think we took in consideration having, instead of very long linear pieces of property, we had 3 different separate pods, and we've created open spaces within those. Relocating the stormwater management ponds to a less conspicuous area. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back one slide, please. The next thing I did, there's always a discussion about this is too intensified of a development. We have 56% open space in this community. And I was looking at this and I was trying to come up with some way to visually show someone what I think from a land plan we tried to do. So here is all the single families and these villa homes over here that I've put down here to assist the single families down in this area. So there are 59 lots here. So go to the next slide. So here are the 59 lots down in that pod 3. And this is all of phase 1. This is 193 lots. This is 59 lots. Go to the next slide. So I overlaid it. I overlaid those 59 lots over those 193 lots. It shows that I built 193 lots on this parcel, and phase pod 3, which almost is the same size, I'm only building 59 lots. It's actually less intensified than normal. Go to the next slide. I basically did the same thing with the other 2 pods. This is the pod coming down Catalpa, and this is one on the other side of Catalpa. So I took those 2 pods, which is 134 lots, and I overlaid it on phase 2. Again, here's phase 2. I put 199 lots on it. I'm actually only putting 134 lots on this one. Again, the argument about I'm doing too intensified of a development is just not true when you look at phases 1 and 2. Incorporating more single-family homes and villas. Next slide, please. Actually, excuse me, stormwater management. Again, the current preliminary proposal is to have stormwater management ponds down here. They're the obvious place to have a stormwater management pond. It's the lowest area. This is where all the water comes down. This is where the town wants it, and this is where they should be. The town currently does not have a requirement for a fence around a stormwater management pond. If you want me to put a fence around these ponds right here, I'll be happy to meet with anyone here. Tell me what type of fence you want it. I'll put it up for you. But the town doesn't require it. And I believe Kathy would tell you there's several other communities around the La Plata area that have not put the fences up, and they're more of a feature without the fence. But if you, the community, want a fence around it, I'll put it up for you. Next slide. Incorporating more single-family homes and villas. In this whole area, I've done 25 single-family homes. 25 out of 392 units. I was aware of these single families over here. I tried to plan around that for you. I put 36 single families down in this area. I'm doing 18% single families in phase 3, where I've done 5% in the whole community. I'm tripling what I've done in the past. And these right here, and you asked me to do single families and villas, these are villas right in here. So actually, I've already done what you're requesting me to do. I was cognizant of it, and the land plan showed that we did it that way. Implementing parking alternates. Can you go to the next slide? When I was going through this call of action, which again, it was an excellent presentation, but I think there's always a different side, and I think there's another argument to it. One of the things, they showed pictures of someone parking sideways in their driveway. The T&D ordinance allows us to do driveways as short as 8 feet. In phases 1 and 2, I never did a driveway less than 13 feet. And when you put a car on it, some of the people do park a little bit of sideways on it. I recognized that over the first 2 phases. And when I went to Soltes and was doing this design, we did an analysis of all the driveways in phase 3. They're ranging for 17 to 35 feet. So again, we're trying to create more parking in the aprons than we have done in the past. We recognized it. We're trying to improve it. And I think the land plan illustrates it. Re-engaging with steadfast commitment to establish controls. There is no one in this room that agrees with that more than I do. When I go through these pictures, and they're perfect pictures for the perfect locations, Timberlake hasn't done what I would have expected them to do from a landscaping standpoint. I have asked them to correct it. To this point, they have not corrected it. I am going to continue to ask them to correct it. If they do not correct it, I've actually given to one of the one of the HOA members all of what I would consider high visibility lots. If Timberlake does not put the proper amount of landscaping in those high visibility lots, I, the developer, will go back in there and make sure it's done. I'm not walking away from this project. This project has been that I've worked for 15 years. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do, I will come back on my own dime and put in the proper landscaping that they didn't do for those 80 lots. I can't go in front of someone's lot, but for those high visibility lots, I'll take care of it. And the only reason I can't go do it because if you go look at our approvals from the preliminary plan and the construction, there's not a sufficient amount of landscaping inside that then I can actually say to them, you've got to do this. But I will commit that I'll go back to do it. There's a picture of a house with very little landscaping in front of it. It drives me crazy. I've already asked Soltes that in our approvals, when we get down to the nitty gritty, there actually is going to be a landscaping package in front of the house. So we know what's going to happen in phase 3. We're going to have a landscaping creation for the high visibility lots in phase 3. So we know that's going to be taken care of. Those are all things I am more than willing to commit to. I'm willing to put into the thing. They're not really details we need to discuss this evening, but you have my commitment they'll be done because I don't like it any more than you do. So all these pictures. There's a question about front-loaded lots. Front-loaded townhouse lots. Every single family here is a front-loaded lot. So it's not like we don't do front-loaded lots. I want to introduce a front-loaded townhouse lot. Why do I want to do it? Because it's a market request. People want a backyard. The T&D, as a general rule, doesn't provide you a backyard. There are buyers out there that want a backyard. And the only way I can create the backyard is to do a front-loaded garage. I'm not especially happy about it, but I think it is a product that will look nice. The architecture of it looks wonderful that we've seen to this point. And I purposely put those front-loaded garages on back alleyways, on private roads, so you don't see them from the main artery roads. So again, from a land plan concept, I think there's 25 front-loaded garages. They're way back here on this road. They're way back here on this road. They're not visible from the primary roads. I again have done my very best to try to fill in a market request, keep the intent of the T&D and put them in locations where they're not visible. But when you look at them, I think they're going to be a nice design. I think when you walk by them, you're going to say, well, that's great. We have another product available in Steeplechase. I've taken a lot of time. I've held this up in my hand for a long period of time. In conclusion, I get it. The current homeowners in the villages of Steeplechase have their homes. They don't want more traffic, more neighbors, and less trees. They don't want to see their community change at all. And at best, they want to slow down the process. But is that fair to me, who has done everything correctly through the zoning process? I'm in the 2009 comprehensive plan. I'm in the 2020 comprehensive plan, which included the additional 9.49 acres. I respectfully ask the Planning Commission to take the recommendation of your town staff to approve and send your recommendation back to Town Council for the amended Master Site Development Plan of Phase 3. Sorry it took so long. I did not expect to have to answer so many specific questions at this high level of the development process, but I thought it was appropriate for me to try to respond to you in the community in regards to what you put together. And if you want to meet tomorrow, you want to meet Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, I am happy to go through this and discuss it with you. But I think I have, as a general rule, over the last 20 minutes, tried to say there was thought in this land plan. There was considerations to the single families. There was considerations to having product in here. I think we've done exactly what we were always asked to do, and I think we're continuing to fulfill the agreement that we had with the town from 17 years ago. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Process question, Mr. Town Clerk. Mr. Reimer's presentation, at least verbally, is recorded in part of the record, but he referred to pictures too. How can we make sure they're in the record?
Everything that is being broadcast is being recorded and transcripted. So what's on the screen is what is being recorded, including the picture. Oh, the pictures that Mr. Reimer referred to are actually an exhibit provided by the, it's actually coming up underneath the written documents entered into the record.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just, you know, and as an attorney, I can't be done yet. Just a quick wrap up of all of that. For the record, we just take record notice of the planning director staff report and enroll that into our record for our application. You know, and I guess I would just make a sort of an editorial. I think a lot of times we tend to think that there's some level of bad faith on the part of the business or the developer. I don't think that's the case here. I think this developer undertook a thoughtful and professional design. I think it is, of course, a truism that growth is never a welcome thing by the existing neighbors. I can tell you for sure the developer proceeded in good faith. And look, this is really important. I think the developer has always been willing to discuss these issues with the residents. I know that Mr. Reimer indicated that he did meet with one of the residents, and that was a good thing. He didn't see as much willingness to meet with some of the others, and that's not good. And I think that with respect to his good faith, I think he's demonstrated that, and I believe he's addressed the citizens' concerns, even though not necessarily germane to this particular application. So with that, unless you have any questions, we'll rest.
I know I was cutting you off earlier just to make sure there's no further comment from the applicant right now.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So at this point, we move to any questions from the commissioners based on the presentation from Director Harrington or from the applicant. Okay, not hearing any, we would move then to Mr. Town Clerk. I think you mentioned it earlier, but have written documents been entered into the record?
Yes, they have, Mr. Chairman. They were attached to the agenda that has been in the hand of the commissioners since July 29th.
And now we'll go to public comment. Mr. Town Clerk, could you please give me the list of who has signed up to speak this evening?
If we may take a moment, we began with potential instructional loss on the receiving end of our broadcast. And the people who are online to comment may not have heard the instructions that at the discretion of the chairman, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If you're joining the public hearing virtually and wish to speak for the record, you must announce your name when joining the meeting and state that you intend to speak during the hearing in the comments section. Keep your phone audio muted until called to speak. We'll leave this open for another 5 minutes while those who are present have their opportunity to make comment.
So clarification question there. Will you be calling upon by name the individual presenters? Oh, okay, I can do that too. Sure.
These are the ones who call in advance. These are the ones who are present. This is the only one that's new. I don't know if it's online.
So present, new,
Yes, but
present.
they haven't opted to speak. This is the only one that's opted to speak.
Okay, the yeses. Okay.
These all called in advance
And why are these X'd out?
because they're on this list.
Okay,
So these are duplicates.
so have this plus this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Commissioner? I do have one thing to add. I'm sitting here watching Janine look at this, and I indicated to the homeowners, I'm more than well to meet with you. If you need my contact, can I give my email, please?
Absolutely.
Ron, R-O-N, @lenhartdevelopment.com. Ron@lenhartdevelopment.com. It appears someone's come on here and said that they sent the email, but it was never replied to. I never received it or not noticed it. But if that's where you need to contact, that would be your contact information. RON@LENHARTDEVELOPMENT.com.
Mr. Town Clerk, are we still waiting or are we ready to proceed with the public?
You can proceed with the list you have in front of you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go down the list that I have of people who have demonstrated interest to speak publicly tonight. A reminder, please come to the podium when called, give your name and your address in the town. And then you have 3 minutes to speak. The town clerk will give you a reminder with about 30 seconds to go. I ask, please, everyone, honor this 3 minutes because we have quite a few people to speak and we've already been at this more than an hour. First person is Cindy Barner.
Ms. Barner's online. Second.
Can she be unmuted?
Ms. Barner, your microphone has been activated. If you can unmute yourself. Ms. Barner, I cannot unmute you. You have to do that from your end.
While she's working on that, should I move to the next person? Erica L. Blass, and forgive me if I do mispronunciations.
My name is Erica Bloss. I live at 23 Steeplechase Drive, and it's within the town's incorporated limits. I'm opposed to the current amendment to the Villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan, which is under consideration today. My husband and I purchased our townhouse 11 years ago. When we purchased our home, Phase 1 was underway, and we had the understanding that Phases 2 and 3 would come in time. Our home sits behind a courtyard, which provides us access to green space, a fountain, and attractive landscaping. While we were aware that the overall plans for Steeplechase were not to duplicate our courtyard, we believed that similar spaces would exist in multiple locations throughout the 3 phases of the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, Our courtyard, with our townhouse in the background, was used on the website and for marketing materials for a period of time. I've been able to view the plans for Phase 3, and it appears that the number of green spaces are few and far between. It actually appears that in the 3 chunks of Phase 3, only one chunk has a large green space for members of the community to access. This is a major concern. We don't have yards of our own and rely on the green spaces as places for us to interact with our neighbors, places for us to give our dogs room to stretch their legs, and places to give our kids somewhere to play. There are lots of kids in Steeplechase. My husband and I have 2 boys of our own. They like to play outside. Because we don't have our own yard, my kids can safely play in the shared green space throughout the neighborhood, at the pool in the summer, and at the small playground, which is located by the only entrance road. I'm cautious when my 9-year-old wants to play outside alone, as there are many cars driving through Steeplechase and we have lots of alleys. He has boundaries and knows he can play in our courtyard with permission by himself. A lot of kids in Steeplechase have more freedom and are allowed to play in the alleys and navigate the neighborhood streets by themselves. As we look at the amendment submitted for Phase 3, there is very little green space. Where are the kids expected to play? If the amendment is approved, the only real space they have is in the alleys. The alleys were created for cars, not kids. If the amendment is approved, the developer will be able to add more homes than originally planned, which equates to more alleys and less potential space to add green space. More cars driving through the alleys and more cars parking on the street. Children will have to walk further to get to a safe place to play. It is more difficult to watch for small children in the street when there are cars parked everywhere.
30
There is an
seconds. 30 seconds.
There is an extensive network of sidewalks, but all the sidewalks lead to roads or alleys to get to the green spaces. The kids have to cross the streets or alleys to get to somewhere safe to play. Approving the amendment would allow the developer to add more homes and more cars than planned to our neighborhood and reduce the potential space available for green space and our families. I respectfully request that you do not approve the amendment. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the residents of Steeplechase.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair,
Mrs.
this is
Plath.
Kelly Phipps. Ms. Barner is on the line.
You can proceed, Ms. Barner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Cindy Barner, and I live in the Villages of Steeplechase at 236A Buckeye Circle, and yield my time to Mr. Bill Dotson for comments. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This is not the speaker's time. This is the commissioner's time, and it is not theirs to give.
Okay, well, as I understand it, she is yielding her time, so we can proceed to the next speaker.
That is at your discretion, but it is the commission's time, not the speaker's time.
I don't see Mr. Dotson on the list.
More than one to speak for.
Okay, excuse me. As I was going through the list, I didn't see your name. I see your name now.
Okay, sir.
And I understand that she is yielding her time to you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Bill Dotson, 177 Buckeye Circle, Steeplechase. I'm here today to strongly oppose the Planning Commission's approving the amendment of Phase 3 plans for Steeplechase. It's wrong for the development, it's wrong for the town, and it's dangerous to play to drivers. I would need 1 hour to unspin the spin that Mr. Reimer did. I'm in politics, and that ranked up there with some of the best I've heard. Green space, ponds becoming green space, buying acres so somebody doesn't build 48 houses, so you build 80 houses. I mean, this is some serious spin. I sold my house in Port Tobacco, moved into Steeplechase 14 months ago. I decided to live in Steeplechase because it is a unique neighborhood. Phase 1 and 2 it's very nice. Reminding me of South Carolina. There was a nice flow of the different style houses, the rear facing two-story units with the garage in the back was really nice. I did my research before I purchased Steeplechase. I looked at the HOA documents. What he skips to say in his things is if you look at the HOA documents, there's 486 houses, and then all of a sudden he buys acres and wants to go to 600. He tries to sweep that under the rug. That's why people are upset. You buy into a neighborhood, you read your documents, you think you've got one thing. He can tell everybody in the neighborhood a different story, but when we come in here, what we do know is we're going to get 600 houses, and that's ridiculous. In early June, my wife was walking the dog, and she saw a surveyor out front. My wife said to the surveyor, you know, what's going on? And basically he said, townhouses, ma'am, and lots of them, just like in the end of Phase 2. So I did reach out to Ron. Jerry Lenhart is a friend of mine. Steve is a friend of mine. So I wanted to make sure that I did have the straight story. I called Ron. He was very gracious. He did appear in my house. I told him Friday. He came there Monday, very polite and sub. The problem is basically, though, we live in a neighborhood that has one entrance. Now, if you talk about proposed entrances down the road or whatever, if you look on the La Plata Town documents, it clearly shows a secondary road coming out onto 301. He wants to forget that's there, and he wants to build townhouses on it. He wants to buy 10 acres, call this an amendment, shove another 50, 80 houses on it, say he rescued it from another developer, but he wants to put more houses on it.
Mr. Dotson, you need to wrap up. You've used
This
your
is
3
why
minutes.
we have such a loud and boisterous crowd today. In the end, bottom line is, we come before the town council. Safety is a huge concern. You are eventually going to have an accident because everybody has to funnel out Catalpa and make a U-turn. Eventually, somebody is going to get T-boned, and we're going to have to go back and look back how these things were shoved down the town's throat, 600 houses, one entrance out. This is important. It's not to be swept under the rug because whatever comes down the road with the other development. Right now, we have one way in, one way out, fire trucks, police, ambulances, one way in, one way out. We talk about those T intersections.
Dodson,
Everything
please
tees
wrap
into
up.
one intersection at that clubhouse, and everybody comes together. It's congestion, it's sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Davis. Is Jeffrey Davis online?
He is online. One moment. Mr. Davis, can you unmute yours?
Yes, I'm muted. Hello, my name is Jeffrey Davis. I'm a current resident within the township limits of La Plata here at the village of Steeplechase of Buckeye Circle, 421. I'm here today to provide public comment concerns pertaining to the developer's amendment master plan for Phase 3 in Steeplechase on Catawba Drive in Buckeye Circle. Recognizing that each neighbor should enjoy a healthful environment, has a shared interest, responsibility to contribute, get involved with the preservation and enhancements of the environment, and receive fair treatment when presenting their opinion. People should be heard with all fairness and assured that we all can exist in harmony and receive environmental justice. With that said, it is understood that the developers maximizing lot yield is by choice. But that concern here is, has this been done at the expense of functionality, safety, quality of life, and loss of natural green open spaces? Phase 3, as depicted in the AMD, does not contribute to the enhancement, beautification of Steeplechase. Phase 3 destruction of green spaces will not be replaced with open beautification green spaces such as courtyards, walking path, sitting areas, and provide human benefits such as social interactions. This is not the spirit of the other phases and cannot be a wise growth movement for the future of La Plata at Steeplechase. My other concerns is the environmental impact. Even though this was talked about, there's a great concern. Has a developer submitted for study and has an approved amendment for Phase 3 environmental impact studies? An environmental site design, which consists of least systemic risk, current studies for protecting and mitigating measures for soil erosion, stormwater management impact, impervious design, and illicit discharge, direct and indirect prevention for non-stormwater contaminants into the stormwater drains. How about the impact on the ecosystem? Cutting trees can result in the loss of the habitat for animal species, which can cause a harm to the ecosystem. We have a lot of different animals running around that's free: deer, the turkeys, rabbits, and some little small foxes, and birds nesting in those trees over there. What the study's going to say about removing and putting them back? Also, the developer seems to have a failed systematic risk assessment that's already in place. Is that buck is going to be passed on to another contractor? Either way, they are not effective as depicted in the submitted concerns that was pointed out by the developer already. The Planning Commission should look into that, showing failed protection measures of stormwater, runoff erosion, and sediment control plans. The current construction activity controls do not prevent nor protect soil erosion and the potential for illicit discharge contamination. These are very serious items that need to be looked into. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Catherine Lynette Dunbar.
My name is Catherine Dunbar, and I live in the Villages of Steeplechase at 50 Jockey Drive. I do have some concerns about the amendment for the Steeplechase Master Plan. I had intended to yield my time today, but I understand we cannot yield our time. Is that correct? Yeah.
No, actually, point of order, the time is of the commission and is given to the speakers. It is not a gift to the speakers from the.
We've
speakers.
already had a person yield time. You can.
I realize that at the discretion of the chairman.
Okay, may I yield my time?
To whom?
To Bill Dotson.
Mr. Dotson has already spoken.
I have a lot to say. He does, and that was our intent.
Mr. Dotson, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Again, Bill Dotson, I'd like to talk about my opposition to this amendment. In 2018, Governor Hogan sent Secretary of Transportation Pete Ron down to talk to the Charles County Commissioners. The presentation was about traffic and the issues in Charles County with road funding. I won't go into the county part, but I want to particularly talk about an in-depth conversation Secretary Ron had. We're talking here about 2004 and all this stuff. If you look at 301 traffic in the last several years, a dramatic change. Why? People are now using interactive navigation systems such as Waze to navigate themselves as they travel. So people coming south from Rhode Island or wherever north are now, as they come down 95, they're being directed down 301 because their Waze, traffic in Springfield, Fredericksburg, wherever, blockage on 95, they're using 301. I mean, I notice it on a daily basis myself coming out of Steeplechase. It can take 15 minutes from Steeplechase to get to Route 6. So we have a dramatic change in the 301 traffic. So talking about a 2004 study is reckless. We have had a significant change in the 301 traffic. We definitely need a significant traffic study because, again, everyone is coming out of Steeplechase. They have to go up 150 yards and U-turn. If they're coming from the south, they have to go down 150 yards and U-turn back. 301 is going to experience a monster change when the 301 bridge opens up. Hopefully, early on in 2023, we're going to have a 4-lane bridge. That is going to direct more traffic down 301, consistently crowding traffic, consistently making traveling coming out of Steeplechase more dangerous. There is right now no guaranteed way out of Steeplechase but Catalpa. Down the road, I saw that confangled thing where maybe you go through a neighborhood and go and drive 15 minutes to get out of a neighborhood onto Stagecoach Road. We're living with Catalpa one way out. He neglected to keep his word and keep the other exit going out of Steeplechase. He eliminated it so he could put more houses in, increase his density. That's dangerous. If the Planning Commission approves this and there's a fatality, it's going to come back and we're going to have to look at why we would approve this kind of density on 301, knowing the traffic conditions on 301. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dotson. Leslie Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Anderson, and I live in the Villages of Steeplechase at 60 Steeplechase Drive, which is within the town's corporate limits. I'm opposed to the current amendment of Villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan, which is under consideration tonight. In less than 1 week, the residents of Steeplechase came together as a community to organize our thoughts and prepare for this meeting. Last week, approximately 80 residents of Steeplechase, along with other citizens of La Plata, met to coordinate and summarize our main concerns. We were able to obtain 177 signatures in opposition to this amendment in less than 24 hours. I hope that the members of this panel had a chance to review our presentation and understand our position. On behalf of my friends and neighbors in Steeplechase who couldn't participate tonight. I wanted to read the letter that we had prepared, but instead, because Mr. Reimer and his other presenters have kind of derailed what I was going to say, I'm going to talk off paper. I moved from New Jersey to Steeplechase, and I chose this development for what it proposed to be, not choosing other developments that were traditional and did not offer the amenities that this has and the sense of home and communities. I was a firefighter in New Jersey before I moved to Maryland. The roadways on the access onto Catalpa Drive for the new proposed Phase 3 that Mr. Reimer said was only 8 or 6 or however many intersections compared to Phase 1. That's not the point. The point is that all those homes are going to come onto the main road coming into this development. That is a danger. It will have a potential for, if anything goes wrong in the development, that people will not be, emergency access will not be available for the community, or those of us who may have to leave the community for some emergency reason would not be able to get out. All we need is a tree to fall down and there's a problem because there's only one exit. I walk my dog several times a day. I see the differences between Phase 1 and Phase 2. There are considerable quality differences and even looks and feels of Phase 1 to Phase 2. When I look at what Phase 3 is proposing, I fear it's going to be even worse.
You have 30 seconds.
Over the past several years, I've not been here, but my neighbors have told me that Mr. Reimer has committed to things in the past. We hear it over and over again, but things do not get fulfilled. So in good faith, I would like you to consider not approving this tonight. I want to make sure that our critical concerns that Mr. Reimer kind of slashed in his presentation, because I don't think he understood them all, that they are heard at the next hearing. I did not know that there was another one, but I want them and hope that you will, or the commission, whoever goes next, whatever, that they hear these concerns because they are critical. We live in this development.
Okay, please wrap up.
Okay. I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on the half of the residents of Steeplechase.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mark Miller.
Hello, good evening. Mark Miller. I live at 83 Winter Circle in the town of La Plata in the Steeplechase development. I wanted to review some documents. I reviewed 3 documents from the Planning Commission website: the staff report, the consistency analysis, and the 2020 comprehensive plan. I'd like to address a few things from each of those. One is access and egress that we've talked about a lot. Leslie's comment about the accesses onto Catalpa Drive coming from the northern component of the Phase 3 at Catalpa Drive. I think that's a very good indication of cars that come in that's going to increase traffic and congestion on Catalpa Drive. It's just, as we know, it's a single way in and out of the development. In the comprehensive plan, item number 3 talks about Qualwood Parkway South, which runs from Route 6 to Old Stagecoach Road, and that runs right through Steeplechase. Ron, if I was under the impression that there was even the slightest chance of a main thoroughfare running through Steeplechase, I would have never bought a home there. You know, Steeplechase is supposed to be tucked away and not be like a main option for not driving on 301. It's like, oh, well, we'll just cut through Steeplechase. The next thing you know, we've got as much traffic as 301. I'd just like to notice, or I'd like to go on the record that item 3 on the comprehensive plan, really just, I don't think is going to work for anyone in the development. Staff report has a goal 15, make strategic, proactive connections and better manage through traffic. So it talks again about future connections with South Town Center property to the north and Stagecoach property to the south. So To me, these indicate that it is important to the city or the town of La Plata that there's an additional point of ingress and egress out of Steeplechase. And to date, I haven't seen a good opportunity to actually make that happen. And, so now we're talking about added density through the 10 acres that Ron is now proposing. That's just going to make the traffic issue even worse.
You have 30 seconds.
The approved master plan indicates future rights of way in North Catalpa and proposed. Anyway, okay, so that's enough on that. Quickly on the landscaping, I'm surprised and appalled that the Planning Commission was apparently unaware of the Phase 2 debacle of landscaping. It seems as though if that's going to be a requirement, there needs to be some type of inspection from the city to ensure that Ron is complying with his requirements for his development permit. So will Phase 3 be any better? Well, maybe yes, maybe no.
Please wrap up.
Yes, sir. I think I may have another moment here soon, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Richard Darrell Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, he's online.
Is he unmuted?
Mr. Meadows?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Darrell Meadows, Richard Darrell Meadows, and I live in the villages of Steeplechase at 345 Buckeye Circle, which is within the town's corporate limits. I am opposed to the current amendment to the Villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan, which is under construction today. My concerns relate primarily to the significant traffic and safety issues this plan will create. First, the current community access point to Route 301 is already dangerous, and with increased traffic, we will only get worse. As it is nearly every time my wife and I leave Steeplechase with our 4-year-old daughter in the back, we, like most of our neighbors, head north on 301. And to do so, we must immediately cross southbound traffic and then navigate a dangerous U-turn. On more than one occasion, when making that U-turn, I have literally had cars behind me try to go around me just as I'm attempting to merge onto northbound traffic. I've seen it happen to others as well. The increased traffic heading north out of Steeplechase that this plan is going to create, the increased northbound traffic that is going to come with completion of the 301 bridge work to the south, as well as the additional traffic on 301 that was referenced earlier, will only make this situation more dangerous. A traffic study by MDOT is needed and should include an assessment of this and related safety concerns that are being raised by my fellow neighbors. Second, as we saw earlier this evening and has been referenced multiple times, when viewing the 2005 Master Development Plan, this revised Phase 3 plan omits a previously envisioned second access point to 301, and the proposed additional Phase 3 roads, again, that have been referenced, entering onto Catalpa, coupled with the plan to allow parking on Catalpa, will create additional risk that an accident, stalled vehicle, water main break, downed trees, other blockage could occur. Any such blockage would prevent emergency responders, fire, police, and EMS from reaching a community member experiencing an emergency. Whether it's a health emergency or fire, any delay that hinders response time could prove catastrophic. So a second access point for the community must become part of any acceptable plan. So finally, I urge this Planning Commission to consider the long-term interest that we have as residents of this community, as your constituents, and in our future safety and that of our future neighbors. I urge this commission to work with MDOT to consider the long-term interest of the town of La Plata, and for MDOT to study the safety and health concerns that this community is raising. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the residents of Steeplechase.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. Richard Desjardins.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard DeJoster, and I live in the villages of Steeplechase at 161 Buckeye Circle, which is within the town's corporate limits. I'm opposed to the current amendment to the villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development, which is under consideration today. I oppose the amendment because what is happening today is simply deceitful. When my wife and I decided to purchase a home in Steeplechase 7.5 years ago, it was because of the high quality standards that each home was being designed and built. The amenities and beautifications of the properties were above all the standards of the communities that we had looked in. Today, the Steeplechase homes, properties, and amenities have become an embarrassment, as depicted in the packages put together by our community. You can see the poor quality of the landscaping, water issues every time it rains, cars not being able to fit in their own driveways, and don't even get me started on the HOA issues. It's a monopoly. If the builder and developer can't even handle or live up to the expectations that we were all promised with Phase 2, how are they going to handle an additional 190 homes in Phase 3? I can still remember the day when we walked into the sales office for the third time. We were ready to purchase our home, and I asked Mr. Reimer if they were going to build across the street from us. Mr. Reimer specifically told me, my wife, my son, and my mother-in-law that there would be no townhomes built across the street from us because of the layout of the property and because of his agreement with the town of La Plata. He said if any building were to take place, it would be one single row of single homes with nothing built behind them. I've served our country for 34 years, 20 years in the United States Navy, and the last 14 years at the Department of Homeland Security. And during those years, I've lived by one word: integrity. When I look at the proposal for Phase 3 of Steeplechase, I can honestly say that integrity is the last thing that is being considered to all the residents of Steeplechase, and even more important to us as residents of La Plata. I urge you, when it comes to the vote for this proposal, that integrity is your very first consideration representing the town of La Plata and us as concerned residents. Mr. Reimer sat here and told all of us and you that he was not happy with the landscaping issues. We have all heard this. Mr. Reimer will talk with all of us at any time, and that's what it is. It's talk. When we built our house 7.5 years ago, for 3 years, there were 5 propane tanks, large propane tanks that sat across from my house. When the house was done and completed, Mr. Reimer told me that those propane tanks would be moved within 6 months. 8 months comes by, I talk with Mr. Reimer, nothing happened. I'll put a fence around the propane tanks. 7 months later, finally, gates were put around, still not moved. It took 3 years to move those propane tanks.
You have 10 seconds. Please wrap up.
Mr. Reimer is all talk when it comes to improving. If he can't handle stuff that's going on in Phase 2, how's he going to handle Phase 3? This should not happen.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Sarah Desrosiers. Can you say that
Very much
again?
for your time.
Can you say your?
DeRosiers.
Okay, thank
A lot of S's in there. So thank you for the opportunity to share my opposition to the current amendment for this Villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan. I'm Sarah DeRosiers, for the record. I live inside of Steeplechase at 68 Steeplechase Drive. I can spell my last name for you if you'd like. I knew you were writing it down, so I was going to help you. Oh, okay. So I was going to read my 3 pages that I had done, but that horse has been beaten. So I'm not going to talk to you about green spaces. I am going to talk to you about 3 things that Mr. Reimer actually did bring up. Stagecoach connecting to us. So there's not a chance that I'm going to drive down to Stagecoach to then come back around to go to Waldorf. But Stagecoach will come through us now. And that's not going to help our community. That's going to make it worse. Or when there's an accident on 301, now guess where Waze is sending you? Right through your community. Also, the website HOA, I've been here for 15 months. I moved from Indian Head. We came from Connecticut. I saw the website. It's beautiful. Everything looks amazing. Everything says that this is that little community town that I wanted because I grew up in New England. Adding all of these is going to make us look like a couple towns north. where they had planned communities and they just kept building and then we're in trouble. Also, sir, I don't know you, so I'm sorry, but if you could sell part of phase 2, how can you promise us that you're not going to just sell phase 3 and the extension and then leave? Because then we're in the predicament we're in now, where phase 2, we're fighting with them to put in sod. We have a connection to La Plata. This is a financial obligation for your company. So unfortunately, that's where I'm worried is, are we going to jump ship and we're stuck with whatever homes they are, putting in half pot plants and fighting with people because our irrigation system doesn't work. So it's not just green spaces and kids and all of that. It's the basic of this is our community and you're not showing us that you're going to hold up to your end of the bargain. Thank you very much. And I'm glad I gave somebody a little extra time.
Thank you, Ms. DeRosiers. Suzanne Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Johnson, and I live in the Villages of Steeplechase at 400 Buckeye Circle, which is within the town limits. I am opposed to the current amendment, which is under consideration today, and I would like to respectfully yield my time to Bill Dotson.
Mr. Dotson, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Bill Dotson back again. I want to just talk for a minute about integrity and misleading practices. I think what you're hearing here tonight, when I went to the clubhouse to have this meeting, I walked in pretty much, I'm new, I've only been there a year, and everybody was mad. And the one thing I kept hearing over and over again is what you heard. This is what Ron said, this never happened. Even Ron, when you talked to me, you said, Bill, don't worry, right across from you is going to be single family homes. And then I look on the drawing, and behind the single family homes is townhouses. So people who bought in the community, they looked in the HOA. It clearly says 486 houses. You dance around the fact that now it's 600 houses. You talk about the 10 acres. You told some people you were buying it for green space. Today, you said you were buying it because you were saving 48 townhouses that wouldn't be the same, but then you want to put even more townhouses on it. So people are coming here today. They're frustrated. They live in a community. I myself personally, just in the 14 months that I've been there, as you said, you sold off that last part of section 2 to Timberlake. I've been building all the life. My dad was a builder. I grew up in building. There is a significant difference between what Timberlake built and what Ron built. And now, as you heard, and you can see, because if you watch somebody's body language and the way he was apologizing, he's embarrassed of what Timberlake built. That's the bottom line. So he wants to dance around that. But Timberlake is not building the same house. For example, in his were top class. Each roof had a row of continuous townhouses, different shingles. Timberlake goes in there, puts one shingle, significant downgrades in the outdoor landscaping. So people are upset. I understand you're willing to meet with everybody, but are you willing to tell everybody the same story? That's important, because meeting with everybody and telling different people different stories is not the same as having a continuous situation. No one is here to stop development. We all knew phase 3 was coming. But we didn't know is we were going to go from 486 houses to almost 600 houses. Again, I want to beg everybody to think about what's going to happen on 301. As somebody said, Catalpa now will have rows of cars parked on the southbound side of the road. So as you come in 55 miles an hour and you come into the right and you turn into Steeplechase, you're going to have within 15 feet of you rows of cars going down Catalpa. How do we know when this is built that kids won't dart out of those cars? As you're coming off 55 miles an hour, 301,
You have 30 seconds.
Catalpa, you are going to have cars and possibility of accident. This is a safety nightmare. This is a traffic nightmare. This is dangerous for La Plata. And we ask our La Plata representatives to represent the town, not an out-of-town developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dotson. Alfonso Pendergrass. Alfonso Pendergrass.
I don't show him in the list of callers unless he's one of the phone calls.
Okay, we'll come back to him. Jeffrey Delcher.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Delcher, and I live at 75 Winter Circle, which is within the town's corporate limits. I'd like to highlight just a few of our density-related concerns with the amended plan. First, I would like to point out for the record that we came across some inconsistencies in the density ratio calculations cited on the original site plan and the new site plan. In the new site plan, the gross acreage includes an additional 22 acres across phases 1 and 2, and it's unclear where they come from or why they're now included. So the main point here is that it doesn't seem like you're comparing apples to apples between the density ratios of the original and the new site plans. The density ratios provided in the new site plan make it seem like there's been a pattern of underdevelopment, but in reality, the final density may be much closer to the maximum of 6.5 units per acre. I can't say whether this would sway any thoughts, but I respectfully request that these numbers be evaluated carefully before any decisions are made. Next, I'd like to point out that 46 of the proposed home sites, nearly a quarter of them, face the rear of another home site. Having homes that face the back end of other homes is a clear sign that you've overdeveloped. It's just clutter and severely deviates from the originally approved design for Steeplechase. And many of these homes would also front face onto an alleyway, not a main street, adding to overcrowding and clutter. Further, a majority of these particular home sites are designated as single car front load garages. This would be a big deviation from phases 1 and 2 and surely would impact the parking and traffic issues we already have. And finally, I'd like to express concern that 134 of the proposed units, that's 69%, will all be crowded on either side of Catalpa and or adjacent to the clubhouse on Buckeye. The area around the clubhouse is already proven without all of this development that it can be a real choke point and a dangerous intersection for pedestrians and cars.
30 seconds.
And Catalpa, of course, has been mentioned a lot here for good reason, because it will be the only way in and the only way out. So again, that's 134 units crammed into this very sensitive, pivotal area. That's 69% of the phase 3 units, and it's 23%, nearly a quarter of the 585 total proposed units for the neighborhood. So bottom line, very unsafe for vehicles, pedestrians, our children, not to mention unsightly. That's all I have. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Delcher. Can we go back to Alfonso Pendergrass? Okay, we'll come back to him. Hiram Buchanan.
Got it right. Yes, good evening. My name is Hiram Buchanan. I live in the village of Steeplechase at 236B Buckeye Circle, which is within the town's corporate limits. I'm opposed to the current amendment to the village of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan, which is under consideration today. I oppose this current plan because, and it's been talked about, the congestion that's going to take place on 301, the pending congestion is going to take place on 301, and as it comes into Catalpa. I was in the military, like my battle buddy over here, for over 22 years, 24 years actually. 22 of those I served as a network manager, IT guy, right? And one of the things that I always talked about, that I always taught at the schoolhouse when I taught there, was you do not want a single point of failure on any network. You just don't. Our neighborhood, when I was trying to think of talking points, I wanted to talk about our neighborhood and our community as a network. It is a network of individuals that works well together. I have great neighbors. I talk to my neighbors all the time about how happy I am to have good neighbors there. And didn't reset my time, but that's okay. All right, it's on you today. All right. So with that being said, anytime you put more, I'm trying to analogize it as best I can. Anytime you put more devices on a network, you're going to incur slowdown. There's going to be degradation in how things flow. You brought up earlier, when that bridge is complete on 301, because I have to go down to Dahlgren sometimes. When that bridge is complete, there's going to be an influx of people coming down south. I walk this community at night. And I live on Buckeye Circle. I went down to the end of Buckeye Circle where it bends to the right. Had my flashlight, my reflective belt, and I actually trucked through the woods. And I saw those rabbits and stuff that we were talking about earlier, but I'm not talking about those.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Just to see where that traffic came out at. If we're going to be dependent on another community for egress/ingress, they're going to be coming our way because most of the people in Charles County live north of us. They're going to be coming our way. We're not going to be going that way too much. It's going to create an unfair load balance on us as far as the traffic is concerned in our neighborhood. So I thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the neighbors and the community of Steeplechase. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Back to Alfonso Pendergrass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, he is on the line.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pendergrass, please unmute yourself again.
All right, good evening. My name is Alfonso Pendergrass, and I live in the villages of Steeplechase, and I'm at 149 Buckeye Circle, which is within the town's corporate limits. I'm opposed to the current amendment of the Villages of Steeplechase Phase 3 Master Site Development Plan, which is under consideration today. At this time, I'm respectfully requesting that my time be yielded to Mr. Mark Miller.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Miller, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to continue speaking. Looking through the documents that I mentioned earlier, there's the constant repetition of good planning, proper design, proper use of landscape. And if you take a look at phase 3, just like others have said, where we've got fronts of houses that face back of houses, it's just not good planning. I've been doing this a while myself, and no one in their right mind would ever design a front of a house that's staring straight into the back of a house. The density is, the organization of the units doesn't yield to a conducive, walkable neighborhood. It doesn't lend itself to an ability to park in your driveway. I know that Ron mentioned that we've got long driveways in phase 3. Well, that's great, but we don't in other parts of the development. So it was also mentioned that this isn't the time to talk about these things. Well, this is exactly the time to talk about these things because you are in a position to approve or reject this to the town council. So if there's another time that we should come back and further these discussions, I think we'd all be happy to come and do it. If this isn't the right time, which others have claimed that it's not, we'd be more than happy to come back. But I'm surprised at the town of La Plata planning that would allow a condensed development, dense development on Catalpa, knowing full well that there's only one way in and one way out, knowing full well that there would be parking on both sides of Catalpa, and that, God forbid, the natural disaster, tree falls, there's a fire, we're all held hostage because we can't get out. We can't get out. And again, that's not good urban planning. That's not good planning. The design of phase 3 in its entirety, I would have to say, is not compliant with the requirements of the town of La Plata. And from a safety standpoint, I spoke with the police chief last night, and he wasn't even aware of this project really. And that surprises me in my experience. You know, it seems to me that we're putting the kind of the cart before the horse here, in that we're trying to agree on density when we haven't even taken a look at the public utilities, emergency services, and things that are required.
You have 30 seconds.
Yes, sir. To be able to fully evaluate the impact that a project has. So again, I'd like to respectfully request at the end of this, whether it's a continuance or a rejection or something that will allow the planning commission and the town council to take a better look at this through maybe a different set of glasses and actually compare the design to what's included in the comprehensive 2020 plan.
Please wrap up.
And the design requirements for the city of La Plata. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Chris Curtis.
Hi, good evening. Chris Curtis, born in La Plata at the hospital here. I live in La Plata. I don't live in Steeplechase, but as a local realtor for 27 years, I've sold both new in there from Ron, leased, and moved, unfortunately, unhappy clients out of there that felt like they were misled. I personally feel like La Plata is just allowing these developers to come in and destroy what we have as a rural landscape and provide little or no amenities or infrastructure. I mean, some of the open space, maybe consider when you go to other areas that are, small towns that are growth, they're doing sports fields, they're doing community centers, tot lots, tennis courts, pickleball. I mean, those are kind of things versus more townhouses. And haven't heard anybody talk about the crime. Crime in La Plata, if you look at all the sites, is up 57 point something %. That's higher than most of the other towns and cities in the same size and population. I mean, I personally have witnessed kids on little mini bikes riding around Steeplechase, just kicking car doors. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. So you bring in more townhouses, and a realtor, I see that. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality. And one of the other things that they were talking about is the pass-through. I mean, we know Quailwood, Jamestown, off of Pocahontas Court, Morgan's Ridge, Valley View. I mean, look at the 3 pass-throughs there and the crime that's increased there because it is a pass-through neighborhood. I mean, I think that's a huge problem and just something to be considered. So one of the things maybe just take control of these developers. I mean, you've got other things on the books too. The townhouse community at the end of Chesapeake. I mean, that is a drug haven at that hotel there. My office was right across from there for I don't know how many years, and we saw druggies in the middle of the street every other day. And now you're putting townhouses up at the end of that street. I mean, where's the logic in that? And I think that, the community does feel that they were misled by this. I mean, I personally was looking in there to move myself and was told the same thing. It was all going to be single family homes. So it's very disappointing. And then I go in and sell in there and tell my clients that based on the developer, what he's told me. And then they're very unhappy. I mean, I literally have sold 3 houses in there in the past 6 months, people that are unhappy. There's no amenities in La Plata. I mean, we've got nothing for children to do. We've got nothing for kids. The average age of the new people moving in is 40.5. They have children most of the time. There's not organized things for their kids to do. So why not hold these developers accountable like other small towns and communities done and do some smart growth? I mean, do some infrastructure. They're coming in from other areas.
30 seconds.
Developing, putting up all this sprawl without an investment in our community, real investment, real infrastructure. I'm not talking about water pipes and sewer systems. I'm talking about community centers, things for people to do. So I would strongly oppose it.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. It's my understanding that all those who signed up to speak have spoken.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kelly Phipps in Legislative Services. There are 10 callers on the line who may not have had the opportunity to express their desire to speak tonight. With your permission, I can run through them one at a time.
Proceed.
Caller on phone number 202-717-7528. If you'd like to speak, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 240-210-3649. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 301-641-3080. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 301-641-3081. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 301-928-3309. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 301-934-0668. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 410-610-4543. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller on 662-648-9004. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Hearing none. Caller identified as 266696687. If you would like to speak tonight, please unmute your microphone. Chairman, I've received no responses. Would you like to close this part?
Yes, thank you, Kelly. At this time, we go to any additional questions from the commission? Any commissioners have any questions at this point?
Chairman Gann, Councilwoman Brian Ward, I do have 3 questions, and they are for Director Harrington. The master site development plan has already been approved. We are amending 9.34 acres.
9.48, yes.
9.34.
48.
Okay, 9.48 acres. Yes. Should we not approve this amendment?
It is staff's recommendation after reviewing the previous approvals and the proposed that it is in accordance with the prior approvals and can be.
Understood for the audience. If we don't approve this tonight, phase 3, it will still go forward.
Correct.
So it does not change anything. The only thing we are amending tonight is the addition of the 9.48 acres.
Correct.
So whether we approve it tonight or not, phase 3 is going to happen. Phase 3 will happen with 186 homes, I think, 183.
190.
No, without the amendment. Take away the additional acreage. It is going to be moved. It'll go forward and it will build 183, I think. Okay. So that's my first point of clarity and question. The second one, to address the density ratio, you did the calculations. Can you address that again for us?
So, and by all means, if Kathy, if you have, I'm not in particular seeing what was brought forward on the.
If that would be helpful. I'm fine with it. I just want to run through the density ratio.
I think I can do this up top. Anyway, so you start with the.
Please turn on your mic.
Okay, green. We prepared the calculations. We have a the tract of land, as it started out, was like 117 acres or so forth. Then you get your net tract for residential development. You get the net tract by subtracting out the commercial parcel that was always identified as parcel 4, still is on the today's version, and subtracting out everything that's in a public road rights of way, private and public, and subtract that out. That's all formulaic per the town code. And that leaves you with a number. That's your net tract area. You then divide that by the number of units, and it gives you the number of units per acre. In a MUD development, you have overall, you can have up to 15 units per acre in any mixed-use district, as the regulations used to read. But overall, an average of 6.5. Never was there anything ever even like 15 conceived of for Steeplechase. And in the first 2 phases, the density was well under. In the case of phase 3, it's a little closer to the 6.5. But what you need to, I guess, remember is that it was always intended to be a high density, upscale, urban style of living. And this didn't mean large setbacks, and it didn't mean big yards. And it really wasn't ever, when I worked with the early stages of the project, hardly any single family detached, because that was the antithesis of smart growth. To have people live, a lot of them, in areas, a municipality where you have the infrastructure to support them, or infrastructure plan to support them, as opposed to out of town on well and septic, is the definition of smart growth. The walkability, those sorts of things. Steeplechase is a bit of an odd one in that it's walkable in and of itself, but not connected too much to the rest of the town. But I think that's been its charm, to a large degree, to most of its residents. It was just this little enclave that was different, was set apart. And I think I took great pride in it, and I'm happy every time I go to see it.
Thank you.
I say that unabashedly.
Thank you. And my last question, Director Harrington. I've heard the term sprawl thrown around. And I did my research with regards to smart growth and if this development met the definition of smart growth. Can you address that for us?
So yes, when you look at sprawl, you're looking at large lot, single family development. That is generally what you see with sprawl development. So for example, unfortunately, Kings Grant, Clark's Run, those are technically sprawl. They're large lot, single family neighborhoods. They don't have a lot of open space. They're not dense. So when you look at smart growth, or kind of the urban traditional development design that was a part of the Steeplechase development, you're looking for the higher density development to enable you to preserve open space, which is how they have the open space set up for phases 1 and 2 mainly within the development.
Thank you. This time we move to any additional comments from the applicant, Mr. Reimer or Mr. Scott? Oh. Are there any other questions from commissioners?
Commissioner Chairman. Mr. Chairman, why don't you take Greg first, and then this is John Mudd. I have questions after Greg talks.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just have 2 questions. One is general in nature as it pertains to the concerns of the residents. The other is specifically directed to the plat for the developer. The first one, the general one, is since the traffic study will likely be implemented, that requirement, by the time of the development, do you foresee any problem in the future with doing a traffic study? That's the first question.
That question directed to the applicant?
Yes.
Take that. You want me to take that? Yeah. Do we anticipate doing a traffic study in the future? Yes, we do anticipate a traffic impact
If
analysis.
I understood the process and your earlier statement, not only will you, it's like a requirement, right?
It's not currently required in the town ordinances, but there is making its way through the approval, the legislative approval process within the town, an APF ordinance that will most certainly be adopted prior to any detailed approvals on this project.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Sampson, your next question?
Yes. My last question is pertaining to the water and sewer capacity for this plat, this additional acreage. Could you speak to that as it pertains to the substation that you plan on putting in? And can you just assuage my concern that that substation will facilitate the subdivision in its entirety in meeting that capacity need?
Be happy to speak to that.
Can you turn
Actually,
your mic? Is your mic on?
I believe it is.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I've been working with the town for the last 5 years. As part of my agreement, I'm actually donating land to the town of La Plata. We have a new southwest quadrant pump station that is already out to bid. It has been approved. It has its financing. The equipment for that has been ordered. Director Stahl, if he was here this evening, would tell you that he had hoped that that pump station was fully operational by now, but just getting the generator with roughly 48 months. Construction is expected to start on the pump station in the end of July, August, if things do go right. And the pump station is supposed to be up and completed and done, hopefully by the end of the year. That pump station will take care of all Steeplechase. It will take care of Stagecoach and what development has been planned by the comprehensive plan for the southwest quadrant. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other additional comments, Commissioner Sampson?
No, I have no additional comments or questions.
Commissioner Mudd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this question is from Mr. Reimer. Even before the voluminous testimony from the residents tonight, most people on this board understand one of my bigger concerns as a member, and that has to do with traffic safety. Ron, tell us this. Have you given any thought in the past or recently or into the future on how you could provide a second point of access for this project? Stagecoach is not a solution. Stagecoach is going to add traffic to Catalpa Drive. There's talk about a prior 301 entrance that was shown that's now going to be usurped by phase 3. There's also talk about a northern terminus entrance. I know I'd be very interested to see what proactive steps you can take now, not a year from now, and not study it, but to take movement towards obtaining the property necessary to, in fact, create a second point of access. Typical road ordinance standards throughout this country suggest and dictate in many cases that when you have more than 1,000 trips a day, a second point of access is warranted. 1,000 trips a day equals about 120 lots. Here we're looking at the potential future almost 600 lots served by a single point of access. That is unfathomable to me. The residents were certainly very eloquent in their depiction of that problem, and I won't go further. So I guess the question, Ron, is how serious can we get, can you be as far as moving forward with the provision of a second access point?
would say that we've been proactive as possible, Commissioner Mudd. We have stubbed out the road to Stagecoach for the request of the town. Stagecoach now has a preliminary approval and looks to be moving forward. There's been various comments in regards to the secondary access that was sort of proposed, that several people have noticed, that shows another 301 that comes down through the south, I think it's called South Town Center. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That access, after speaking to that developer, would never have worked. It was put on a piece of paper, but the reality of it, that is an access that it was never going to be able to be done and shown, because there is a stream right there. So the stream makes that access incapable. So what we did, we actually moved the access point up farther towards 301, and that's why we've created this additional access point in phase 3 to get over to South Town Center. As you can tell, I have limited 301 frontage. It's not like I can go out and create a second access point. Number one, I'm not too sure the state would allow me to do it, state highway, creating that second access point that close to the limited amount of land that I have. So I've done everything that I believe I can from a planning standpoint to do what you're requesting. And the difference for me from a lot of developers, I take the commentary from the community very personal. And it does bother me that, one, they don't want any access at all. One of the individuals tonight says, if I ever known there was going to be a second access point, I would never even bought in the community. And now we're looking for a second and third access.
Not what she said.
Okay. If I misinterpreted, I apologize. That's what I heard. But we have corrected, we have created 2 additional access points out of Steeplechase. And the South Town Center, from what I understand, and planning can talk about this, but they're working actively on that piece of property. So it does appear there would be a second access point from there as well. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, I'll elaborate a little bit more. So South Town Center is owned by a separate developer, and they are working on concept plans right now, which is why I required them to show an interparcel connection to South Town Center on the plans itself. As he noted, there is a stream. If you go back to my environmental page where I kind of highlight where the streams are in my PowerPoint, you'll see that there is a large stream that runs just along the one part of phase 3, and they're utilizing forest conservation to preserve that stream. That's where that initial future right-of-way was shown on the master site development plan. And there's also a future connection shown over to Route 6 through the LaGrange property. But again, there is a large stream channel that goes through there, and they are utilizing forest conservation to preserve that stream as well. So that's why those two future roads that were shown on the previously approved master site development plan do not work. And so they are showing, and we have proposed the connection through to Stagecoach. And even if phase 3 does not get approved as amended, that connection to Stagecoach is proposed and is happening. So I just wanted to make that clarification as well.
All right, I appreciate
Additional
that.
comments from the commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm done for the night. However, what concerns me is this sense I keep hearing at tonight's meeting, particularly from town people, about how limited this planning commission's scope is when it comes to this amendment. I know what the issues are. I know what the issues should be. And I really take great grievance to someone suggesting that as a planning commission member, you need to limit your point of view or the issues that may be relevant to this project. So with that, I'll end my dissertation tonight, and thank you very much.
No, sir, we're beyond that section of the meeting. We are in the section of the process. The process calls for us to be taking commentary from the commissioners at this point. Are there any other comments from the commissioners? Not hearing any. Now it is time for any closing comments from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to briefly respond to Commissioner Mudd. Certainly, we didn't mean to suggest that we would limit or somehow stifle the Planning Commission. But on the other hand, there is a process and there are rules and there is a zoning code. And the developer took some hits from some of the public comment tonight, good, bad, or indifferent. But the developer does have the right to rely on the process. And that's what we're asking. And with that, we'll rest and we thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Reimer, nothing else?
Nothing else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Scott has described that we do have a process. The next step in that process is to thank you, all of the public, for tonight's hearing. Also thank the applicant for their presentation, Director Harrington and her team, and the commissioners. We will not hear any further comments or questions during this meeting. So at that point, we now have, I'm closing the public hearing. And we have several options. One, we could vote on it tonight. We could keep the record open. And I would say if we kept the record open, we've already received all the input from the public. It was properly advertised and so forth. And I would like to make a motion that we keep it open for one more month so that the commissioners can digest everything that they've heard this evening. That's a motion put before the commission. Is there a second?
Just so that I get it straight for the record, Mr. Commissioner, you're keeping the record open for another period of time?
The record is open so that the commissioners can digest this additional information provided tonight.
Okay.
Not to receive additional information from the public because they've had plenty of time to provide it and the opportunity to provide it.
Thank you.
I think to clarify, you'd have to close the public hearing comment period and table this to the next meeting.
That's probably the better words. I thought I had closed it, okay? I've closed the public hearing, and I think that's better words.
I was just trying to be clear. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So table the discussion to allow the commissioners ample time to digest what they've heard tonight. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Who was that? Commissioner Sampson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, second from Commissioner Sampson. Properly moved, a second. Is there any further discussion among the commissioners on that?
Chairman Gann.
Yes.
I feel that we've had this information for a couple of weeks. To table this discussion for us to digest it. There's nothing to digest. We're not approving the preliminary plan. That's not what we're here for. All of these things that have been brought into discussion by the public, which I greatly appreciate. I live in Steeplechase and I didn't want phase 2, so I'll just be on the record for saying that. I didn't want my trees cut down, but they did get cut down, and here I am, and I still love my neighborhood. We are not here to address the sidewalks, the egress, ingresses. That's not what this is for. The time for that would be when it comes forward for the preliminary plat review. And you get to have all of those discussions and bring that information forward. Tonight, the only thing we are voting on is the addition of the 9.48 acres. That's got, whether we approve that tonight, it doesn't matter. The stage, phase 3 has already been approved. We just won't be adding the 9.48 acres. And so I'm not in agreement with keeping this open because there's nothing to digest. The traffic study, impact study has nothing to do with the 9.48 acres. This is all we're talking about tonight. This is all we're talking about, the 9.48 acres. The design and everything else comes forward at a much later date. That's not tonight.
Okay. Other discussion from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, again, we're picking and choosing what we can think about and rule on. It sounds like the approval of this thing is a sure thing, apparently from the town council standpoint. If tonight is just a formality, to me, traffic are real issues that affect not just the public, but everybody. And I'm not sure we're incorrect to talk about that issue tonight, to suggest the applicant look further into that issue. It's a method of communication and dialogue back and forth. At the end of the day, again, with the minimal importance that this board apparently represents to the town, I'm sure it'll get passed. As far as taking a little time to digest what we heard tonight, I think that would be the prudent thing to do. If we don't do that, then what's the point of sitting here for the last 2.5 hours listening to this information if we're not going to take it and digest it and think about it over a period of a few days? So that's why I agree with Mr. Chairman in that we need a little time and then schedule a work session at which time the vote can then be rendered at that time.
Further discussion amongst the commissioners on the motion? You were going to say something else?
Yeah, I totally disagree with Chairman Mudd, and I respect your point of view, but we are not voting on a preliminary plan. The traffic impact study, the roadways, the design of that development is not in the question tonight. The only thing we are voting on, the amendment only includes the additional acreage. It's not going to change. If we do not vote for this tonight, Phase 3 is going to go forward, and then we'll come back with a preliminary plan, Plat, which should have been discussed previously. It wasn't. So we can leave it open if that's the will of the commission, but we are only voting on the addition of the acreage. That's what the amendment is. It has nothing to do with anything else.
And if I may, just to make sure that it's clear that tonight, or even if you table it for an additional 30 days and we come back in September, the Planning Commission is making a recommendation to the town council. The town council will then hold a public hearing, just like we did tonight. So the public can come out and talk to the council, who is the approving authority on this. So the Planning Commission is taking the information of reviewing the code and the prior approvals, the guiding documents as outlined in Chapter 191-27, and you are making a recommendation based on findings of fact. Does this meet the T&D guidelines as prior approvals? And the thing that's making this a bigger deal is the fact that they're adding the 9.48 acres, which will increase the overall density. So that is the procedure, but the Planning Commission is a recommending body on a master site development plan. The Planning Commission will be the approving authority on the preliminary plat when that comes back. And at that point in time, as Mr. Reimer has stated, they are willing to do a traffic impact study, even though it is not technically required right now. Maybe that's something we add into, the discussion items. But that the master site development plan is the guiding document. Preliminary plat is where we will be looking at the specifics, the landscaping, the street trees, the roadway, all of that information.
Other input from the commissioners, discussion on this point?
Chairman Gann, this is Tracy Johnson. I vote to also table it to digest this information from tonight.
Well, we weren't yet at the vote. We're still in the discussion stage. Any other points to add, Chairman or Commissioner Johnson? About Commissioner Banks, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I thank you. I just got off of mute because I wanted to say that out of deference to a lot of the hard work and passion that the community has put into their presentation and their discussion, I'm inclined to think that tabling it would be a great idea in order to digest it further as well.
Commissioner Sampson, do you have any discussion at this point?
No, I have no further comments.
Okay, so we have a motion that has been made and properly second. I'll go through the list of commissioners for a vote.
Mr.
Yes or
Chairman,
no?
just so that I can get it right for the record,
Okay.
you have tabled this definitely until such time as the next time the commission meets, or tabled it indefinitely?
Definitely, not
Thank you.
indefinitely, no,
So until September 6th?
yes.
Thank you.
So that's a good paraphrase of the motion. I'll try that again. The motion that has been seconded is we are tabling this definitely till the September Planning Commission meeting. And that's been seconded, and we'll go down the list to ask folks to vote. Councilwoman Bryant Ward, yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Banks, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Sampson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd, yes or no?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion carries 5 yeses to 1 no. Did I get that, Mr. Town Clerk, correctly? Pardon me?
Everybody's heard from. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. I asked Mr. Sampson for a vote. He's an alternate tonight. So we cannot count his vote because he's not needed to vote since all the other commissioners are here. So the motion carries 4 votes to 1. Check me on that, Town Clerk.
You are correct, sir. With 4 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
I believe that now ends this very lengthy discussion.
I'm sorry, it's
on-
been brought to my attention and I missed it earlier. Mr. Sampson seconded it in the first place.
He did?
Yes.
So we never had a proper second.
No, we did not.
Mr. Chairman, I tried to second it at one juncture before you kept changing things. So if you take my second as an official second, I would offer it.
But I defer to my parliamentarian.
If I could impose upon you to make the motion one more time, as I understand it, the chairman motions to table the discussion or the vote definitively until the September 6th commission meeting. It has been moved by the chairman.
John Mudd seconds that motion.
Unless anyone intends to change their vote, it still carries the way it did before.
So are there any commissioners who want to change their vote? Not hearing any, the vote carries 4 yea to 1 nay. And I want to thank everybody for your participation tonight. Thank you for hanging in there. And because of the issue, I was actually concerned about some lack of respect. And generally, there was quite a lot of good respect. So I really appreciate that. So thank you all very much. I would like to recess for 10 minutes if we still have the other items on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, a 10-minute recess. 5 of 9, we will reconvene.
You said if I were to throw, there would be a. You just asked the cat. Yes.
Pine Grove. So as I move forward and we transition, I will make sure to include Pine Grove, formerly Heritage Green, to kind of reduce some of the confusion moving forward. So Neighborhood K is before you tonight for their phase 1 of their final plats. The preliminary plat for Neighborhood K was reviewed and approved at the August 4th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting for a total of 176 single-family dwelling units. The development is subject to a development rights and responsibilities agreement, which was approved in November of 2021. Under this agreement, they have purchased 200 single-family dwelling school seats, which will be applied to Neighborhood K. So they're tonight proposing the first phase of the Neighborhood K development, and as shown on the exhibit, it's under supporting documentation attached to the agenda. You'll see the phasing exhibit, which is shown in red. So that will be lots 1 through 44, 85 through 93, 118 through 123, and 153 through 163, and includes approximately 48.56756 acres of open space parcels. So staff has found that the final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat as approved by the Planning Commission, and school seat allocations are available for all 176 lots in Neighborhood K. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the final plats as presented. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have of me, and the applicants are online should you have any questions of them.
Are there any questions from the commissioners for Director Harrington?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question. Janine, as far as water allocations, I'm assuming those occur, if we're going to consider the plat, then I'm assuming engineering has said yes, a water allocation is available for this section.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commissioners for Director Harrington? Okay, we move to the applicant. Who will speak for the applicant tonight? Is the applicant for Pine Grove on the meeting?
Chairman Gannon, let me see if they're on this list.
Thank you. We'll pause.
Mr. Chair, Steve Scott, for the record, I am their attorney, but this is, of course, not my specialty. But I do see Danielle Conroe on, I believe, project leader or project manager. And I think she may be trying to unmute. There she
Good
is.
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm Danielle Conroe with Rogers Consulting. I'm the project manager for the Pine Grove subdivision. And we've coordinated with Janine with Planning Department. We don't have anything further to add to her presentation, but we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I guess this might be an innocuous question, but why the name change from Heritage Green to Pine Grove?
We spoke with a local marketing firm in the town of La Plata, and we felt that we needed some feedback on a most appropriate and updated name for this property. And Pine Grove, after some market research and talking with local residents, is what the firm came back with. So we're reimagining the identity.
Thank you, Danielle. No further comments from the applicant?
No, sir.
Okay, any questions or comments from the commissioners? Not hearing any, could I entertain someone to make a motion, a commissioner to make a motion?
Chairman Gann, I move to approve the Pine Grove Neighborhood K Phase 1 final plat as presented.
The motion is to approve as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Commissioner Mudd.
Right.
Okay, we have a proper motion, proper second. Any further discussion among the commissioners? Okay, then I'll go for a vote. Commissioner Johnson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks? I'll come back to her. Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks? Commissioner Gann votes yes.
One moment, sir, and I'll add Commissioner Banks.
I'm sorry, I didn't understood that.
Commissioner Banks?
Oh, a yes or no?
Yes, apologize, my mic had muted.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sampson, we don't need to call on you for this vote. The vote is unanimous to approve as presented. Thank you to the applicant team, especially for your long wait for this evening. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
next item on the agenda is Mallard's Pond, a preliminary plat. Director Harrington, the staff report.
So for the Mallard's Pond preliminary plat, this was formerly known as the Townhomes Potomac Square, and the property was annexed into the town on December 19th of 2017, and that became effective on February 3rd of 2018. The property was zoned rural residential under the Charles County Zoning Code and received an R3 designation under the Town Zoning Code. The applicant submitted an application for a major subdivision preliminary plat on August 16th of 2021 for the review and approval of a 24-lot townhome subdivision. The proposed Mallard's Pond subdivision has two means of ingress and egress from Lodge Street and Chesapeake Street, and buffer yards and all other code requirements are being provided in accordance with the town code and the comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval of the major subdivision preliminary plat in accordance with the code and the comprehensive plan.
Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners for Director Harrington?
This is Commissioner Sampson. I have 3 questions.
Proceed.
Okay. All 3 are for the applicant. The first, I just want to make sure it seems self-evident on the plat itself.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sampson, if your questions are for the applicant, let's give the applicant a chance to talk first. That was going to be the next item on the process. That way they might answer your questions in advance. Do you have any questions of Director Harrington?
Yes, I can direct at least one of my 3 to Director Harrington.
Okay, you can ask that of her now, right?
Thank you. Director Harrington, on the plat layout itself, is the forest conservation easement at Lee and Scroggins designated as the actual buffer yard to the western boundary? The reason I ask, it seems self-evident, but on the southern side, on the plat, it's actually spelled out as a buffer yard, but it's not spelled out on the western side. So I just wanted to make sure that my assumption was correct.
You are correct. So is there any way that I can point? You're out. So on the very western side, just above the forest conservation easement, Kelly's got it. That is the western, and that does require a buffer yard since it's up against single family residential. And then there is a buffer yard on the southern boundary up to the right. Yep, right there. There's a buffer yard right in there as well to buffer against the house that's to the south of the property. So they are providing buffer yards on both the southern area and the western.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners for Director Harrington? Okay, now we move to the applicant for their statement. Who will speak for the applicant?
This is Stacy Lagana.
Hello, Stacy. You can proceed.
No other comment other than we're in agreement with the staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
So I'll go to Commissioner Sampson. You had questions for the applicant?
Yes, sir. Just two two questions. The first one, I just wanted to make sure, because I actually saw the property, and due to the houses located on Lee Street and Scroggins, there's actually three houses there, and I could see where the property would bump up against the proposed plat boundary bumps up against their property. I just wanted to know, was there any concerns or complaints from the property owners as to the boundary lines of that development or that plat?
No,
That
we
been
haven't
brought up
gotten
in the past?
we haven't gotten any concerns or, I believe that even when we did the annexation, I don't remember hearing from any of those, adjoiners as well.
Okay, and then my last question is that on Lodge and Scroggins, according to the plat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you have an egress and ingress at that point. And I noticed with the residential house there, it's very close. So can you address what measures you're planning to take in accordance with the zoning code to address that spacing issue and the noise issue?
Sure. It is close. You're correct. We are going to do everything we can to mitigate any impact. We're not going to be on Miss Scroggins' property at all. All the work is going to be done in the existing right of way there. It was a requirement of the annexation for us to provide this access. We'll be providing all sediment and erosion controls, everything in accordance with the code to mitigate any impact onto her property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sampson. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners for the applicant? Okay, not hearing any, I ask the commissioners, someone to make a motion. Please.
Chairman Gann, this is Commissioner Banks. I motion that we approve the plan.
Understand Commissioner Banks has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Mudd seconded. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any additional discussion among the commissioners? Not hearing any, I'll go to vote. Commissioner Johnson? Yes or no? Okay. Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gann says yes. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Agricopia amended preliminary plat. Director Harrington, staff report.
Thank you. So the applicant submitted an application for a major subdivision preliminary plat in July of 2022. This was after we noted that there was a difference between the final plat for section 7A as proposed with the preliminary plat. And so after looking over the plans, it was determined that the preliminary plat needed to be amended to revise the lot layout for section 7A. As this is a development zoned PDAG, which is Planned Development Agricopia, any future development must be approved in compliance with the governing documents. So they are not changing the density, they are not changing the acreages it's just rearranging the lots, as they noted that there was a drafting error on the previous preliminary plat as far as the unit counts and the square footages were concerned. So we did have, and actually, I don't think they have my PowerPoint up anymore. I'm not sure if you can bring up my PowerPoint, Kelly, but I did have a comparison between the previous lot layout and the amended lot layout just to show the minor differences. Well, I had something that was a little better. Yeah. So while they're looking to bring that up, It's just minor amendments to the lot layouts, basically. So staff did review all of the preliminary plat and guiding documents to verify that no major changes or really any changes besides just the lot configuration was being changed. All other aspects of the previously approved preliminary plat will remain in effect, and we are recommending approval. Are you on the G drive? It's not in there. Oh, did you put it in there? Okay. So scroll on down to like the very last page. So that shows you the proposed revisions. And Ben Dyer prepared this exhibit because I did realize that the preliminary plats do have the phasing lettering on them, so it's a little hard to see the lot layouts. So they did provide this. You could see the old property lines in blue and the revised property lines in red. So again, the number of units are not changing. The total acreages are not changing, but they are reconfiguring the lots. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have of me. And we actually have the applicant here in the room, if you have any questions of them.
How you doing? RJ Renshaw.
Is there anything that you want to add, Mr. Earnshaw?
No, we're sticking with the same plan that we've had. What happened in the previous, Bolton Latham had this, and what they did, they used 3,000 square foot versus the 5,000 square foot, which is required now per lot. So we just reconfigured it. So we just had to move things around and meet current standards.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Earnshaw or for Director Harrington?
This is
Okay, then I would
Commissioner Johnson. Sorry.
go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
So Director Harrington answered one of my questions, and that being that there will be no additional lots added. But the other question is the lots, you mentioned to make the lots more consistent, or my question is to make the lots more consistent with existing lots or added lots.
They're changing, they're making them larger so they actually fit the current statutes, we're not statutes for you guys, but the current zoning ordinances. So we had to widen them out in the section. I don't know if you can see that last part where Alfalfa Circle and Lano Drive is in that center, the little, what I call it, island area. The proposed number that we had in the preliminary plat had 2 more in there, and it was jamming them all up and they wouldn't fit correctly. We couldn't get the driveways in correctly. So we actually moved 2 of them across the street and then opened them all up to meet the 5,000 square foot requirements. So we're not adding any additional lots, we're just moving them around on this particular section. The other lines you see, if you see some lot lines adjustments, that was done because as things got approved for the plan, which was what we called the crossing. We had to adjust that for the bridge that was placed in there. So that created the road to be a little bit different patterns. It's actually a little bit straighter, doesn't have a curve, that much of a curve in it.
Any other questions, Commissioner Johnson?
None. Thank you.
Questions or comments from other commissioners for either Director Harrington or Mr. Earnshaw? Not hearing any, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Chairman Gann, this is
Commissioner
Commissioner
Johnson.
Banks.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure which commissioner that was.
I think it was
We both were talking, so
Yes.
it's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Again, this is Commissioner Banks, and I move that we approve the amended preliminary plot for the purpose of reconfiguring the lot sizes.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Johnson. I second.
Commissioner Banks seconded. Any Okay. Which commissioner made the motion?
Dawn made the, yeah, Commissioner Banks made the
I had
motion.
it switched.
Johnson
I am
made
very
the
sorry
second.
for that. Okay, so we'll go to vote. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gann votes yes. Thank you, and Mr. Earnshaw, thank you for
very
your
much
time.
For hanging in with us.
Okay, I think we've covered the public business. Now it's to matters of information. As part of her present. Wait a minute, something added to the agenda? Did I miss something? What's next on the agenda?
We're not gonna, I don't think we have time for that. I think I'm done.
Was that on the agenda last week?
That was the one I asked you if we could add it, actually.
Oh, I
Um,
was bad in saying
Oh my gosh.
yes if I said
I'm
yes.
having a major-
Can we table that?
Oh, no, this has to do with the library. This is so on the 208 Washington Avenue, we have the town bought that property and we are having the Charles County build their library on that site. And it's zoned R8. And because it's zoned R8 and the residential zoning code did not accommodate a cultural institution separately, they would have to get multiple variances or special exceptions in order to build the library the way that we're looking to have to build it. So the main issues were the setbacks. So you can see from the development standards table, I've proposed a very minor amendment to the residential zoning code section to separate cultural institutions out and to give them the similar development standards as we would have in the CB zone, which is literally right next door. This is a huge project for the town, and we're looking to ensure that it is developed to the best possible design that it can. So in order to do that, we are looking to revise those development standards to make it easier to cite the library and to proceed forward with that. We'll still require the open space and public use space, and there are setbacks provided. However, they are less than what they would have been under all other permissible uses. And then so I noted that in 2018, for some reason, that the note underneath of the multifamily for the maximum density of 20 dwelling units per acre, that language was missing from the code, so I just added that back in. That was in the code before that as well. So I think that it was getting a consensus from the Planning Commission on moving forward with this zoning code change. Yes, so so the motion would be consensus to proceed forward with an amendment to the residential zoning code with reference to the cultural institutions.
So would one of the commissioners please make a motion?
Chairman Gann, I move that we move forward with the proposed amendments to the residential zoning regulations regarding to add the culture, to separate out the cultural institutions.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Mudd has seconded it. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Commissioner Johnson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Councilwoman Bryant Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd?
Yes.
And Commissioner Gann votes yes.
Thank you. So now we'll move forward with the public hearing process for that. So that'll need council approval as well.
So matters of information is the next item on the agenda now, right?
I think technically, do we want to verify if we're going to go back to continue with hybrid meeting format officially?
Oh, that's where you have it on the agenda?
Yeah.
So this was our first hybrid meeting. We've been away due to COVID for many, many years. And I'd like to hear input from other commissioners about whether we should continue as hybrid or go back to just virtual or go back to just in person. Any comments from the commissioners?
Chairman Gann, this is Commissioner Banks. I am in favor of keeping the hybrid option. While there are often technical challenges, I think it gives us the opportunity, the best of both worlds.
Okay. Other input from the commissioners?
John Mudd here. I would agree with that approach. I think we're at a different part of the world now. In spite of the pandemic, I think more and more offices and institutions are operating virtually. I'm very fond of it. I think it's very complete and understandable, and everybody gets a chance. I know there's a need to sit face-to-face in meeting rooms, and a hybrid version certainly would be fine with me. But I'm typically going to be connected via the computer.
Other input from the commissioners?
This
Is
is
this is a
Commissioner Johnson.
Go ahead.
I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Johnson,
I
I
would,
interrupted you, sorry. Go ahead, you proceed.
No problem. I am in favor of having both the best of both worlds, having it hybrid and virtual, with the option of being in person. I think it's a convenience that that we just can't foresee sometimes. And so being in person, I feel like I personally will sometimes be late. And so to avoid that, having the hybrid option as an option would be convenient.
Thank you. Any other commentary from the commissioners on this subject? Okay, and I'm thinking this is not an item that needs a formal vote. It's a process thing. And I'm hearing a consensus that we could move to hybrid. Is anyone opposed to moving forward in a hybrid fashion? Not hearing any opposition.
Now it's planning department update. And I will do this really quickly because I'm tired. So for upcoming projects, as we noted, we had the Mallard's Pond or Townhomes Potomac Square, their major subdivision preliminary plat tonight. They will have their final plat moving forward. Agricopia Section 7A final plat will be coming forward. A Steeplechase Phase 3, I guess we're going to table the preliminary plat for the time being, and we'll come back with the master site development plan and see that process through. Pine Grove, formerly Heritage Green, their Neighborhood K Phase 2 and Phase 3 final plats will be coming before you. I am working on several draft code revisions that will be coming before the, some of them will be coming before the Planning Commission. Most everything on this list will, since it deals with the zoning code and the subdivision ordinance. Development updates, just to note that we issued a grading permit for 109 Charles Street to proceed forward with their development. We issued occupancy permits for 105 Centennial Street, Suite A, Meridian Fitness, and 115 LaGrange Avenue, Suite 102, CC's Hair Salon. Matters of information, school seat allocations. The town council authorized up to 250 school seat allocations for FY 2023. So this will very closely tie into our preliminary plat and final plat, mainly the final plat reviews for the Planning Commission. And just to note that Heritage Green, for the most part, will be shown in a different bracket since they had the development rights and responsibilities agreement, and they are purchasing school seats from the county. So those are separate from the 253 that the town council has set for the town. Still working to do a updated development capacity analysis, taking into consideration water and sewer, along with school seat allocations. We did sign the authorization for our new permit software, Municity, and we are starting the initial setup for that. Again, we have our development updates that are posted on the town's website. We have a monthly development updates webpage on our town website, and we have our Town of La Plata Planning Facebook page. Shout out to follow us, please. We post some good information. And again, just with the draft code revisions that I keep talking about. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Commissioner or Director Harrington?
Well, I'm a commissioner now.
Not that you want to be, right?
You've been the mayor. I've been, and you called me a doctor the other day. I felt very special about that one.
Any questions for Director Harrington? Not hearing any. Town Council update. No updates from the Town Council. Any questions for Councilwoman Bryant Ward? Are there any other issues for the good of the meeting to be brought forth by the commissioners? Not hearing any, I adjourn this meeting at approximately 9:27. Thank you all.
Thank you.